let's make sure this is actually... Wait, what? Streaming out
Echo there.
Oh, I'll play the intro music, too. Actually, I'll go ahead and turn off the output monitor real
dear
quick.
God. Fighting black magic. Fighting black magic. Always fighting black magic. Okay. Let's see if stream is functioning. Connect streaming software to go live. F. All right, type anything but F in the chat if this is working. We have spent almost an hour fighting black magic hardware and software, and I think we are finally at the finish line, very close to victory. Oh, God bless America. All right, hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. So today I'm here with Bearded Biomed and Better Biomed. One of the topics that I've been discussing a little bit more on the channel is medical right to repair. A lot of the same problems that we have when we're talking about fixing MacBooks, consumer electronics, and stuff like that, they also have when it comes to fixing medical equipment. One of the things that I brought up recently was this one company that this gentleman sent a pump in to be repaired, and they destroyed the pump, and then they sent it back to him after destroying it, in spite of the fact that they took this in with the idea that they were going to fix it for him. Now, I am not an expert when it comes to medical equipment. I don't know the difference between an X-ray machine and a stethoscope, but I can usually tell when a manufacturer is making something up. And there were a lot of comments saying, you don't know anything about the medical industry, you shouldn't be commenting on this stuff. You know, a medical device is not an effing MacBook. So I thought I would actually get some people who are experts in the community to explain why a lot of what you will read through on these Reddit threads is just fundamentally untrue when it comes to why it is that the medical manufacturer should be able to just destroy your property instead of fix it when you send it in for repair. So thank you so much. There. Okay, sound is back. So I thought we would dig into...
Audio back?
Here we go. So
All right,
I
fantastic.
thought we'd read some of these comments. Now, most of these comments have been deleted. I theorize that a lot of this was astroturfing, where they'll, have a reputation management company use all these sock puppet Reddit accounts. So the first thing that you see here, the thing that came up the most, was medical devices are not effing MacBooks. So why, does the manufacturer have a point that medical devices are not effing MacBooks? You can't be opening them up and doing component level repair. You have to take a $2,000 device and destroy it every time there's any issue with it.
I mean, if you think about it, don't we have rules for things that have lithium-ion batteries in airplanes? And there's a reason for that, because a lithium-ion battery, when it catches on fire, it continues to go out of control. Is it any different when you have 300 lives in your hands? Because if you fix a MacBook incorrectly, and that MacBook goes on an airplane, technically you could ground the entire airplane. Just the same. One medical device generally affects one person at a time. The same argument was made about automotive. So if you have an uncertified person fixing your car, will it contribute to a failure? It's possible. It's possible in every industry. But at the same time, if you issue out guidance, parts, approved parts, and if you monitor the situation, including like industry partners, and you establish contracts for regional areas of responsibility, it's not going to be an issue. We've seen this time and time again with other types of industries. And yes, medical equipment, some of it keeps people alive. But everybody thinks that every device keeps you alive. That's not true. I mean, some of them might be a little device that holds your legs up during surgery. I can't get parts for those. And that's just a manual device that's got like a pneumatic shock. I can't get parts. What's the reasoning on that one? So not every device keeps people alive, and they should remember that.
Okay, now if we hot air a new chip on a MacBook and it doesn't work, this won't lead to someone dying. If the OEM of an MRI says this is wholesale broke and your doc decides to go to an independent service organization for a repair you don't know, the doc doesn't know if the repair was sufficient. I'd rather side with the OEM over an independent service organization that competes to the floor on service contracts. It's life and death with many of these devices. If someone says it's effed, it should be treated as such. Right to repair is important, if not essential, for many fields and people. But you don't gamble with someone's life to save money after you've been told this needs to be destroyed.
Chase, you want to talk about that one? Because MRIs, third parties have been repairing MRIs since they existed. So go ahead, Chase. You're in the field every single day. You see this.
So I come from a management perspective of this as well, because we have certified, years trained of knowledgeable technicians that work on MRI, CT, that what a lot of people don't realize as well is the longer these devices are down, it's costing the facilities thousands a day.
Right.
From an OEM perspective, which, by the way, they actually tap on a lot of us ISO companies to facilitate services for them in areas that they're just don't have technicians available, or they just don't have the bandwidth to take care of it. So a lot of the times we actually get contacted from the manufacturer to do these repairs, to do these services. They just don't let you know that because obviously it's not the picture they want you to paint. Now, to caveat back to what we were speaking before is the technician that I know that I'm sending out there, he's been trained since he was a child from his father that was an OEM technician. And I would put him ahead of any OEM technician just because of the breadth of knowledge that he has. And this holds true for a lot of the third-party services.
I agree.
We're painted into a picture to where everybody that's in a ISO perspective is a mom and pop working out of their garage, and this is not true. I'm not going to say that there aren't services like that out there, but that also leads to the facility to do their due diligence and to make sure that they're providing that level of service as well. A lot of ISO companies have gone to the level of going after certifications on par or right there around manufacture, the ISO 9001 certification, the 13485. A lot of ISO companies have these certifications nowadays. So if we have somebody that is trained to the same level, if not better, than an OEM technician, facilitates the same level of work, has the same level of certifications, are you just to say that we're still playing with life and death, especially when we're also facilitating those services for the OEM to begin with?
And what we should probably remind everybody, because a lot of people don't know what ISO certification is, it means that you have a process for everything that you do. It means you have written instructions on how every single repair is done and how you record it and how you report those malfunctions. Because with things like MRIs, that's a FDA-regulated activity. So when you're talking about medical imaging, if that MRI is down, the hospital's technically down because they use MRIs for everything from cancer to finding, let's say, a lesion, finding an aneurysm. I mean, they use MRIs for so much stuff. And if it takes like 24 hours or so for an OEM to get out there, then, those are surgical procedures and stuff that they can't do.
Yeah, one of the points that I was making, and I wasn't making it as strongly because I'm not an expert in this field, is when they say, well, what if somebody dies, if X, Y, and Z happens, I'll often put back with, okay, well, if you have this $1 million piece of equipment that's out of commission for 6 weeks rather than 2 days, how many people are not receiving medical treatment as a result of the manufacturer saying nobody's allowed to work on it? And outside of even just the question of cost, where a hospital is going to make the decision or an insurance company is going to make a decision based on the cost of medical treatment, having an additional zero on it because you're not able to actually repair something, how many people are being denied medical treatment because of that? How many deaths could be being caused because of that?
That's a good point.
I would say this too. So for those saying that we are putting people in danger, the FDA did a study on this. It is FDA RA 710. If you look in there, they went in and did a deep dive, and they could find no discernible outcome that caused patient injury or death from an ISO certified, from an ISO perspective, from an ISO company, third party, outside manufacturer that caused any kind of injury or harm to a patient. That picture has been painted by certain organizations, people that have the funding, the power, the connections to push a narrative that us little guys do not have the ability to do. So again, when people want to cite that, I would point them towards the FDARA 710 because the work was done at a government level, which sides with us.
Let's see. I think I actually have that study to pull up here. I had it at one point.
Yeah, you did a video on it.
Yes, it was something like the independents were critical to the functioning of the healthcare system.
So what a lot of people don't understand is during COVID, some countries around the world, their healthcare system crumbled, whereas here in the United States, ours survived. It thrived, in fact, because the third parties acted as a buffer. So while everybody else in the other side of the world, the manufacturer wasn't able to handle the workload, logistically they weren't able to traverse borders, they weren't able to get parts out to their customers. We, third parties, have stock of parts, we have stock of units for loan. The American healthcare industry has an entire third side of it that most people don't understand. There's tens of thousands of businesses that help facilitate healthcare in the United States. That's not how it is in countries around the world, but in the United States, we have this entire secondary market, and we're all part of it as third party. And we're not asking for like unfettered access to like parts and we can repair whatever we want. There is going to be some oversight, and we know that, and we're okay with that. Just the same as your car at a Ford dealership. Ford doesn't own that dealership necessarily, but they have oversight over the dealership.
Yeah, so this is from 2018. The currently available objective evidence is not sufficient to conclude whether there is a public health concern related to servicing, including by third parties, of medical devices that would justify imposing additional burdensome regulatory requirements. The objective evidence indicates many OEMs and third-party entities provide high-quality, safe, and effective servicing. And the continued availability of third-party entities to service and repair medical devices is critical to the functioning of the U.S. healthcare system. It's like,
See that last line, it's critical to the healthcare system. They're acknowledging the fact that we would have just completely collapsed under COVID if it wasn't for third parties stepping up.
This came out before COVID, too.
Yeah.
So, imagine what this would say now after you have, years of people rushing to hospitals and not having actual equipment and the capacity built up to be able to do those repairs.
A lot of people don't see, when COVID hit, we weren't even able to go from Louisiana into Texas. Like, they shut the border down. You could not go from state to state. Hospitals, if you were from another state, you couldn't even enter the hospital. As a contractor, if you don't have an existing contract with the hospital, and let's say they call you out of nowhere, if you didn't have an existing contract, they probably wouldn't let you in the door during COVID.
Yeah.
So that's why they say don't put all your eggs in one basket. And this is exactly what we're doing, is we want to create areas of responsibility. So let's say Siemens sells you the city of Houston, and that's you and your company, that's your responsibility. They'll offer training and parts, and now you can go and service all the Siemens in that area. Because if just one company services stuff, then logistically you're putting all your eggs in one basket.
Who is more likely to be sued if injury or death occurs if the manufacturer returned the item to the owner and they kept using it on patients? Yeah, the manufacturer. So the idea that if they returned that pump, if they actually did the repair that they quoted the user for, that if that pump managed to malfunction and go Skynet and inject cyanide into the veins of the...
No, see, that actually happens on the daily basis, though. Is if you send something to the manufacturer and it's no longer able to be used or serviced by them, then they do it all the time, where they will ship it back to you and say this item is end of life. They'll give you something called an end of life letter, and they'll give you back your property because it's your property. It's still a piece of property that your hospital owns, and it's still on your books. Because, we have to have all this stuff on our books for tax reasons and for regulatory reasons. It's your property, and it's something that you can sell to somebody else. Because even though you can't use it on a patient anymore, it's still worth something because of its parts. So what will happen is a third-party company might buy that pump, because even though the pump motor is past its life expectancy, the screen, the touch screen, and maybe the outer plastic case, those parts are still good. So just because the pump mechanism is expired, the screen, the outer case, the things that are most likely to break, they're still good as parts. So it still has an intrinsic value. it's still your property. They had no right to destroy it.
Yeah. I can't believe the amount of I'm assuming that these are actual people and not bots when I say that, but I couldn't believe the amount of people that said this. I'm torn on this one. The issue exposes a flaw in my value system. I support private property. Private property has nothing to do with the economics and is the building blocks of all concepts of freedom. And then he's saying, the flip side is I support the right of the manufacturers to dictate the rights of and around their private property. In this case, the rights extend to the transaction contract, which stipulates clearly that the transaction is only valid if the contract stipulations are followed explicitly. In this case, the manufacturer did not stipulate in the contract legal remedies for breach of contract that the purchaser agreed to already, and was perfectly within their contractual rights to enact.
No, that sounds like a Chat GPT response.
Okay, that actually sounds like...
See, the thing is when, it's true that some manufacturers will lease you equipment, to which, yes, they probably do have a stipulation that they still maintain ownership. But when you buy a piece of equipment, you own it.
That actually sounded like ChatGPT. I think that what the ChatGPT was trying to say was that if you're only supposed to use it for 7 years, then do they have a right to say, when you bought this, you didn't buy it, you bought the right to have this pump for 7 years?
Well, let's be fair, too. A lot of the devices that are on lease agreements, those aren't your high capital level
Right.
Types of devices. Is usually SCD pumps,
Right. It's really
feeding
small
pumps, stuff that is not going to typically kill anybody.
Take a look at how many hospital deaths are contributed to faulty medical devices and then see how there are people who just want to buy parts and repair without the proper training. Just because you're a biomedical engineer, it doesn't mean you know how to fix everything. Patient safety must come first.
Actually, that's interesting because how many deaths are related to? It's usually user error. I think user error or malpractice.
I have a perfect story for that.
Okay.
User error for something that can kill somebody. So, actually, 2 days ago, I had a emergency call come in through our dispatch system. A anesthesia unit had somebody under, and all of a sudden the O2 levels just stopped working.
Oh, geez.
Come to behold is that the user was not allowing adequate time to properly allow the O2 sensor to get enough flow from the oxygen to properly calibrate it.
Okay.
What they were doing was they would flip it, calibrate it immediately when the unit was turned on, whereas you have to allow typically 2 to 3 minutes for it to warm up to actually gauge it. And again, this is the end user. These are people that get paid way more than we do as biomedical technicians. But often than not, a lot of people don't realize that we are also the ones training these individuals to use these devices. There's no biomed out there in the world. I don't give a damn if you're manufacturer, ISO, in-house, it doesn't matter. No one will ever say we know how to work on everything. But we have the base knowledge of understanding what the machine does, what it's supposed to do, and then this is where it comes into where the manufacturers have to release service manuals and allow training on those high proprietary items to allow us to properly service them, which is hence why we're talking about this. But to say that we are incapable of working on something and causing patient safety, we are trained on this.
Right.
We go through a high level of training, not to mention every biomed in the field continues their education even after that, going through manufacturer provided training, go get further degrees. We go and get left seat, right seat training from other technicians who have been doing that service on that particular modality for years. So to me, that's honestly an asinine statement that
I think
was
they're
just
missing
made.
a whole other side of this argument. Because if they're saying like that medical equipment failures are what's causing it, do you know that if you're an anesthesiologist, if you put somebody under and your life is literally in your hands, that anesthesiologist does not have to be trained on that specific anesthesia machine that they're using. Dead serious. And anesthesia machines can be drastically different in function and form from model to model. You would think that if you are trained on, let's say, a Draeger anesthesia machine, that you could only put people under with a Draeger anesthesia machine. That is not the case. You could go to a GE at this one. You could go to, some other model, and they're completely different. You would think that an anesthesiologist, they could kill you if they don't do something right. They do not have to be trained on that specific model of machine that they are using.
We got to figure too.
crazy is that?
A lot of these doctors, they have certain tendencies to stick with a particular manufacturer as well. So,
They do.
I know particular doctors that I am friends with that he will only use GE. It doesn't matter where he goes. If he travels to different locations, if they have anything other than GE, he will not work for them. While as you have other ones that, have a familiarity with one type of, GE, Mindray or something, and then that's when they call it an in-service.
But there's no legal requirement.
No, but that's where we're getting at, is that's another hat that the biomed wears that people don't realize, is we're also providing that in-service training so that they know how to properly use the device.
I'm not train an anesthesiologist. Actually, we do go in and show them how to switch the profiles and stuff, and we know when somebody's not used to it. But you would think that if somebody keeps you alive using that device, that you would have to be trained on it. I mean, if you fly an airplane commercially, you have to be trained on that specific model. If you're not trained on that specific model, if they even have one different revision, you have to get recertified. But on anesthesia, you don't.
What I find interesting about a lot of these comments is the sheer number that were deleted, or the user accounts that were actually deleted after. Like, I remember when those ads came out 3 years ago, where they were talking about how you are going to be assaulted in a parking lot if independents can fix their cars. The moment that they lost, every one of these,
right?
Well, yeah, Massachusetts. All these ads were deleted. All the websites that they had, were hosting all this stuff, were gone. So I'm glad that many audience members were pointing me to this so that I could archive it. And you have to use this site called Undid It to even see all these comments in this thread, because every single one of them has been deleted, and in some cases the user accounts in some of these other threads have been deleted. So another one we have here. I was about to join the angry mob with my pitchfork to start yelling at the clouds, but then how the turntables... I think he means to say how the tables changed, but again, this is
ChatGPT.
This is ChatGPT.
They could be referencing, I can't remember the show, but how the turntables.
No.
No, this is either ChatGPT or like Babelfish for the reputation management firm that got hired to defend this company in the Philippines or something. It's about an unsafe medical device that needed to be disposed in the trash and never used on patients again. The manufacturer made that point pretty clear to me. The most alarming thing to me is that the stupid idiot, referring to the guy that wanted to get this fixed, didn't get the point and is mad, and that he can't keep using his unsafe medical device on patients anymore. He would actually do it if the manufacturer did not prevent him from doing so. He's not even ashamed to self-report himself publicly on social media. This is some dodgy malpractice, tip of the iceberg.
No, that's actually kind of true. Okay, and so let's break that one down to what actually happened. The users almost always want to keep using the broken piece of equipment. Almost always. If we're knowledgeable on that device, we can step in and say, hey, that's not safe. And we put a stop to it, and we document the failure when it happens. Like, we can go into an operating room while you're cut open and they're doing things, and we can either help them troubleshoot the device while it's happening, or we can document the failure so it never happens again. If we're not trained on that device, neither of those things happen. Okay?
So you being trained on this allows you to specifically say when something unsafe is occurring so that you can stop it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the most important things, because it's not really about doing the PMs on the device. We are still going to get called to report to that room. When that device is failing, that's under contract, we still have to go in there and calm the doctor down. We might not know what that device does because they didn't offer training, but we still have to make sure that it's not going to catch the building on fire and somebody's not going to die. We still have to report into that. Now, do I know what I'm documenting? I wish I knew how it works. But, and this is very common. So biomeds, we exist because we're going to decrease downtime, increase patient safety, and we're going to decrease costs, right? Because we can get that equipment back up and going faster. But we also do incident investigations when stuff is hitting the fan. Like, we go in and we try and solve that problem while it's happening. And that's what people don't understand. It's essential that your local biomed, the guy that's going to have to respond to that problem, documents it correctly and or avoids it in the first place.
Is there some audit or something to put the doctor's office license in check? I was thinking of HIPAA, but that's patient records. It's not quite it. That's the end of that post, because he wanted to get that guy in trouble who went on social media and said, I was trying to reuse this pump.
I mean, people try to use equipment all the time.
Yeah, well, as biomeds, when we identify something that is faulty, first thing we tell them is pull it from service.
Right.
We tag it.
With all the accessories.
Everything.
Yeah.
I've had multiple occasions where we've pulled something from service and the doctor goes and rolls it right back into the case. Hence, in that particular circumstance, that's when we all went to court. And things got litigated because the first entity that will always get pointed at first in any of these discussions will be the biomed. So I could tell you, when it comes to our side of it, when it comes to documentation, QA, QC, doing what we need to do, we are on top of it because we know we're going to be the first person objectified into that discussion.
We're aware of that, the legal implications of everything that we do.
By the way, for the new people that are joining the stream, check out these two channels. We have Bearded Biomed here and Better Biomed here.
I like that. That's slick how you went back and forth.
That is pretty cool.
Yes. We have links in the description down below. They're very worth subscribing to. Okay, now, next comment here. This one's a little bit more difficult, I think. Especially, here, I lost my place. It says, pay the money. People have literally died from independent service organizations replacing something that seems simple with improper parts. This needs to be highly regulated and controlled. People's actual effing lives are at stake. Example if needed, and then leading to a recall. So MAUD Adverse Event Report. Alaris Medical Systems, Inc., Alaris Infusion Pump Medley System with Medication Management System, and then they have a link to, some recall or something.
So, question, if it's a federally sent out recall,
Avante? We're going to go and talk to them.
why?
They're right
They're here?
They're here.
Oh, cool, let's ask.
Yeah.
So, okay, does that person have a point? Like, he's saying that somebody...
So they're talking about a pump that's had numerous recalls.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Alaris system has been around for 20 years. Like, since I started as a biomed 20 years ago, like, Alaris has been out there. So you're talking a device that's been out there for 20 years. And they still are in use everywhere, and they still have recalls. And, you have different software in your little pumps in the main module. There's software in all these different ones, and that software is supposed to talk and work together. And, so that contradicts the FDA report completely. It says there's no evidence.
Let's go to another level there when it goes to recalls.
Yeah.
Sometimes, from an ISO perspective, we will be informed of these recalls.
Right. Yeah.
If you're doing your due diligence, a part of those boards and bulletins, paying attention to that stuff. Because most of the time, it'll get sent out to the end user who owns the equipment
And you have
of what
to
the recall
respond.
is. You know who's facilitating most of the time those recalls and doing the due diligence and informing people of what needs to be done? It's the biomed.
Right.
And even from a ISO company, I handle recalls all the time. Even the Philips Respironics, CPAPs, when that recall, we facilitated all that. We made sure that they got sent in and sent back. And
Right.
again, these pumps are over 20 years old. We're still maintaining with what we have. And like I said, if you are aware that there have been recalls out there and you're not doing what you need to do as the end user to maintain and give us the parts we need or send them back so they can be properly adjusted, whatever, then you can't place that on an ISO company.
No.
So to be clear, this pump has had numerous recalls that were not related to any sort of independent servicing already.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. And the thing is we don't know the service history on that pump. Like I said, the Alaris Medley system has been around for about 20 years. What's the service history on that pump? We don't know. It's been floating around for probably a decade.
But you know what? We're documenting every single time we service it,
Yeah.
all the parts used on it,
Yeah.
all the services that were done on it. My company, we can go 5-6 years back easily on one device out of
See its history.
thousands and see history on
Yep.
it. So it's not like we're just willy-nilly doing
No.
services on this that you can't track. We're tracking everything.
This one claims that he works in the industry, which is very difficult to believe because his Reddit username is RabbitBot.
Oh.
Bot. Okay.
Okay.
You deleted your reply, but if you happen to be curious as to what the answer would be, I work in the environment. It takes a shitload of different techs to service all the many devices in a hospital. You can have 10 biomed, 25 FS techs, and you won't even scratch the surface of needed expertise because these systems are complicated and deal with patient safety. So you have the biomed guy that does the basics, normal maintenance, basic troubleshooting. Then you hand the device off to a specialized tech from the vendor or a vendor-approved independent service organization that has the necessary training to service these devices in a safe and proper manner. And if the FDA-approved vendor said end of life has arrived, you replace the motherfucker.
So is he saying that he's a biomed and that's the process? Because that's not how it works at all. If
No,
something's under
I don't know
contract,
of anybody that
we don't
goes through
touch
that
it.
process.
It goes straight to the contractor,
Exactly.
the OEM. But that's clearly written by somebody that is not in the field because we wouldn't word things that way. That was irregular how their language or grammar. That was completely irregular. Certain
Is it
departments of the
typical
hospital.
to have a lot of these bots in these conversations like that?
I'll be honest,
This is really
when
bad.
it comes to my industry, it's usually fanboys of the company. I imagine, Apple has fanboys, Tesla has fanboys,
Yeah.
and, they're Arch Medical, I don't know, like Iton Medical, these are not companies that I imagine have rabid fan bases. These are companies that I would imagine have the money to pay people to pretend that they're a rabid fan base.
I thought Lewis is next to Big J. Hey, I'll take it.
Wow.
Oh my God. I appreciate the laugh, man.
Okay, so it says what they said. How there's zero reason to hang on to this device, not money-wise, safety-wise, none. You're going real hard to protect the hospital's right to use old, shitty, might kill person equipment to save money.
Can I touch on that real quick? So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I am a part of a third-party ISO company in Texas. We take care of a lot of critical access hospitals, a lot of regional facilities that you'll drive hours before you can get a nearest, remote items. They do not have the level of funding to update their devices in general. Not to mention when COVID hit, I don't know if y'all saw the reports, but we had a lot of hospitals closures across Texas alone of these hospitals. So if they can't even keep the doors open, do you think they're going to be funding to get new devices? Of course, this gets into, if you want to get political and talk about,
Public funding and stuff.
public funding, Medicare, Medicaid expenditures, all that kind of stuff, fine, whatever. But we're doing the best with what we have.
That's right.
And to caveat off of that comment too, the biomed is always recommending that something get replaced or needs to be looked at or budgeted for the next quarter or maybe within the year once we either get it end of life or something is becoming so expensive that it's not worth the value of the device. We call that economically feasible repair. And that's at that point when we start making those suggestions. So the biomed can only do so much. We're, besides servicing, repairing, we're also an advisory to whoever that body may be that makes those purchasing decisions. But I think some people fail to realize is that there are medical systems out there that just don't have the support. But would you rather them use something that's outdated because they can't get the funding to replace that device, or take away that medical level of care in an entire area and have someone have to drive 5-6 hours just to get regular care or something serious?
That's true.
Okay, just to correct and clarify, okay, that guy, he actually has 300,000 karma on Reddit, so yeah, even if I disagree with him, the likelihood of him being a bot is probably low at that point, unless they're really... Yes.
But, I mean, to say that a device doesn't have an intrinsic value is just wrong in general. Because, actually, as the device gets older, yes, it goes down in value, but then it goes up in value. Because the thing is, not only do a lot of other countries around the world still need those parts, they still need that equipment, so it has a value there as it gets older. But as the manufacturer stops selling parts for something, if there's hundreds of thousands of these devices out in circulation but they can't get parts anymore, now those used old devices are worth more because they are a bunch of parts, right? So you can take one good device and get 3 or 4 old devices back up and going.
Yes.
So that's what people don't understand. They have value. Even as an old device, they have value because hospitals either here or across the world, they don't have the money to update all their devices. So what they'll do is they'll buy a good used device and they'll part it out. And they'll take those parts, I mean, just like you've had to do for MacBooks, you'll take a donor and you'll take those parts, and then once you are done with the repair, you have to recertify the device.
Yep.
We go through the entire PM. We go through and check everything on that device before we put it back in service. So even though you used parts, you still have to recertify the device. So that argument's
you're using
moot.
for instance, you'll just take an IV pump and a screen goes out. Are you gonna dump that whole unit when you have a completely good unit with, let's say, the pump mechanism's out but the screen is working? Mm-hmm. You can make a good one out of those 2 units.
That's right.
It's not, and again, we're going through and recertifying it again, so it's not hurting anything.
Right. What else you got? I know you got some good ones on there. Look at all those comments.
All those are from one dude, so I was gonna... Let's see. In a highly regulated... only the original manufacturer can ever repair something, and if they refuse, they have the right to permanently destroy your property? Think about that for a second. In a highly regulated industry, I think I'm okay with it. I don't think it's hypocritical to feel differently about iPhones. The FDA requires all medical device malfunctions to be reported to the manufacturer for an investigation and potential corrective action. And it's for good reason. Medical devices kill people all the time from misuse or manufacturing defects. Every single component down to the screws can be traced back to the factory it came from and the day... Okay, that sounds like bullshit already.
That is completely...
That's absolute garbage. it came from the day it was made, because the stakes are literal life and death, and the manufacturing environment and processes are incredibly strict. If there's something wrong with a product, the manufacturer needs to know so they can determine if other products are at risk for the same failure. Not to mention, if the device is repairable, there are processes in place for the product to be serviced and returned to the customer at the manufacturer's discretion. And if the failure is deemed to be the manufacturer's fault and it can't be repaired, they will absolutely provide a new device or credit for one. What the hell is he talking about? They can trace the screw back to the factory that made it, bruh.
Not at
No,
all.
they cannot.
That's
I'm
completely
calling
ridiculous.
100% bullshit.
So
I don't.
let's say a patient monitor, which we're going to see lots of them in here in just a little bit. Let's say a patient monitor. You have all the cables that check your blood pressure and all that, you know. All the cables start with the manufacturer cables. But as that device goes on, the hospital establishes contracts with all these other companies. That cable that makes that monitor do its job is more likely to come from China. And it's going to be a cheap alternative to the OEM cable just because it's cheaper, right? So when they're talking about, oh, these parts and stuff need to be OEM, what about all the hospitals? The tens of thousands of hospitals around this United States that are using Chinese cables and stuff to monitor the patient because they're cheaper. And you can visually see the quality difference in those cables. But they're still going to do it. And the cable is most likely to fail compared to the monitor.
Yeah. It's the most wear and tear item on the device. It's, if you look at any kind of patient monitoring, EKG, those cables go through hell.
Yeah.
Most of the time we go in there and something's not working. Well, you see a strand of loose wire and
Just falling apart.
Open wiring, and yeah, of course it's not going to work. More often than not, accessories fail more than the actual device.
But wouldn't you say that like an accessory failing is more likely to cause a misdiagnosis than the actual device?
Oh, absolutely. EKGs all the time. Oh, this patient's got arterial fibrillation. No, for one, you had your settings set too high on the low pass filter. You had, a break in one of your main lead wires. You have
Cables
artifact
falling apart.
Yeah. A lot of these things will automatically cause the end user to diagnose the machine as failing when actually it's either a settings, user, or accessory issue first.
Everybody just needs to understand one thing. Most deaths in hospitals are caused of malpractice and user error.
Okay,
Hands down.
Malpractice, I get. User error, can you explain that?
Okay. So medical devices are designed particularly well compared to any other device that you'll see out there. There's usually redundancies built in to everything. So medical devices generally don't fail. 90+% of all the failures we see are due to negligence, abuse, or user error, which means they're using the wrong settings, they weren't trained on the device in the first place, or they chucked the device down the hallway. That's what major devices fail from. We don't just have a shop full of broken stuff because the devices start shutting off. That almost never happens. No, it's because that device was chucked down the hallway, or the cables got cut underneath the bed because they taped them down, or I've seen some real ridiculous stuff, guys.
You ask any biomed across the United States, everybody has a user error story or an avoidable damage story, which they kind of go hand in hand. You can have ones to where, one of my slogans is, did you plug it in? Most often not.
Did you plug it in?
Most nurses, they'll say that, well, my monitor will not turn on, my EKG will not turn on, my hospital bell won't turn on. And you go to the back of the unit, while it is plugged into the wall, you follow the cord and it's sitting there on the floor, not plugged into the device. So again, they're causing something to say this is broken, where they didn't do just a simple check of checking if it's plugged in. Of course, it can lead also to power issues like battery maintenance, that kind of stuff. But again, the biomeds are maintaining that. Avoidable damage, hospital beds. The little dongles, the little squares that have the little controls on them to lift your bed up, turn TV on, stuff like that. Those get crushed in the arms all the time just by patient use and nurses wrapping them around.
It's the point we're making is when people say that the medical devices are causing deaths, there's redundancies built into everything. There's alarms that go off if the device fails. The reason that the person died is because staff ignored the alarm. Okay, we have hundreds of these stories, and we could go on, and we're not going to sit here and drag the healthcare system through the mud, because these people are going through a lot. All healthcare people are stressed, but when you say that devices are causing a lot of failures, the FDA report says it doesn't. And usually it's attributed to some sort of user abuse. I mean, the devices just don't shut off. They don't just magically like let the smoke out for no reason. It's usually because IV fluid dripped inside it, or because somebody crushed it. I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff, man.
So on one of these devices, they were talking about a pump. The person with the over 300K card, which I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt, just disagrees with me. It may work in the industry, and it's not ChatGPT. Said, what you're describing has nothing to do with what I'm discussing. He said, I agree with right to repair, but not at the expense of patient safety. FDA wants most medical devices to follow IEC 60601-1. That outlines that you should identify the expected service life of a device. They do this because it's best practice for patient safety. Would you want your kids or mom hooked up to a pump that the manufacturer said should have been pulled 2 years ago? This isn't an effing old iPhone. Oops, too much drugs, now mom is dead. And I said, this is ridiculous. I actually looked up the standard. And I said, nowhere in IEC 60601, which is the substandard that goes over pumps, does it say the service life shall be 7 years. It's not in there.
No.
So I said, don't pull it's not an effing iPhone nonsense as a hand-wringing emotional appeal to avoid coming up with an argument. He says, that's because the guidelines allow the manufacturer to set that life expectancy. If you think medical devices are where the waste is in healthcare and IT, you're lost. It's computer rebuys after 3 years. It's the CEO of a nonprofit making $6 million a year. It's the CIO making $1.5 million. It has nothing to do with making sure people have the safest possible life-saving devices. You're trying to cut costs in the wrong spot, and you're carrying water for healthcare systems to provide less safe care to patients in order to save money on a pump. Insanity.
I think that's actually pretty accurate. That's pretty accurate.
I don't see any issue with that.
See, the IEC is a manufacturing standard, and it's outdated because it doesn't highlight specific responsibilities to the level of ISO certification, which I do believe the FDA is going to eventually say, if you fix medical equipment, you need to have ISO certification. A lot of our companies, Phoebe Medical and his company over there, they're ISO certified because they already know that this is going to happen. Eventually, they're going to come down the line, they're going to say, hey, we want written instructions on every one of your processes. And that's what ISO certification is. It means you invested the time, energy, and money into basically writing down everything that you do. And we do it, I know they do it, and the fact of the matter is we do our jobs quite well. We have entire communities that are reliant on us because while, yes, major medical centers might have the budget and whatnot, there's entire regions that are isolated from everybody else, and they're relying on contractors like him and mine. And we do pretty good jobs, man. I mean, our customers are happy, and if anything, we're gaining market share over OEMs. I mean, there's many OEMs because they're just keep raising their prices. They don't even have to justify why.
Yeah, they're literally raising the cost so much that it's degradant to the facility itself.
Yeah, it's not even economical for them to keep the doors
It makes
open.
more sense for them to be able to maintain that level of patient care to go to an ISO company. Not to mention, it's spoke about widely in our field too that some of the ISO companies, the level of training on specialized modalities can exceed some of the manufacturer training.
Well, let's say you have a manufacturer technician. The manufacturer sends them to what, a 3-month long school? It could be somebody that just graduated with a 4-year degree, 2-year degree, most likely 2-year, right?
Yep.
So you graduate with a 2-year degree, you go to work for an OEM, you get a 3-month long school versus a guy that's been working for 15 years doing all these types of equipment, let's say MRI. He's fixed MRI for 15 years versus a guy that just graduated with OEM training for 3 months. Who do you think is going to be most likely to document the problem correctly and to resolve it? I mean, I'd put my money on the old timer any day because that's how repair industries work. Experience speaks volumes over official training and people that have like one piece of paper to their name.
Thank you for mentioning the Respironics recall. I wasn't aware of it.
Good, I do have the right file.
It's true. That's an ongoing thing right now. Yeah. There's several people have died because of those. So
I would guarantee that let's see, about the pump that was end of life. I promise you it was at the end of its life. That was, and I promise you that it was at its end of life. That was, and promise you this was the case because I've been in these meetings, clearly communicated along with all service paths at elbow trainings, etc. The hospital knew the clock on the device when they bought it. All pumps have an EOL. I would guarantee that this outcome was contractually agreed to, or an FDA enforcement of the mandatory end of life.
what determines end of life? Because
The manufacturer.
if a device, now I would understand it because a lot of pumps now have something called the drug library, which
Right.
they will maintain, let's say, propofol or something like that, and it tells you how much you're allowed to give a patient of that certain body weight over a certain period of time. That's called the drug library, and a lot of them have that. And maybe if the software can't be updated anymore, but that pump particularly that was in question, I don't know the specifics on it, but it's just a generic little pump. And I think, what dictates end of life is usually when the costs of maintaining that device exceed its value.
Yes, or, I mean, if you want to get into it as well, the manufacturer, usually around the time they decide to end of life something, they do have a new product that they want to start rolling out.
Yeah.
Because they've either improved its design or, are trying to market it and obviously let people know that you need to start, which usually by the time they end of life, depending on the manufacturer, it's within reason to end of life it.
Maybe,
but
yeah.
it depending on the manufacturer, of course.
7 years though?
No, like that's
That's way
No.
too soon.
yeah, I absolutely agree on that. And I don't know if we want to throw
I
those companies.
understand if there's a major recall on it. Like there's
Absolutely.
a definite mechanical issue, and which when that happens, usually the manufacturer of that pump offers a discount on a fleet replacement, which means you replace all your old stuff with new stuff. They'll offer you a discount or a trade-in value because they accept the fact that you're a loyal customer and that there was some sort of liability
you have
on
the
your
right
account because
file.
it was maybe not made as well as it should have been.
So I actually like his comment there. So there, he was talking about using retired equipment for training education.
Yes, it's true.
A lot of biomed colleges, a lot of that stuff comes through donation. It's very expensive to teach a biomed program. The military, if you went to their school, the level of just upkeep on just those devices, because in order to properly train a biomed technician, you have to constantly break the device and repair it.
Right.
So parts, software, just everything involved in it, especially when you start getting into the specialty modalities, imaging, anesthesia, sterilization.
You can have millions of dollars worth of
Exactly.
equipment
So,
just for training.
Myself, and I know many others, if we come across a facility that they decide to get rid of their device instead of just taking it to the junk heap, we make sure we get it in the hands of colleges out there so they can still teach people about how to use these and repair these, take them apart, kind of to the level of what you do all the time on YouTube. You just take something apart.
Yeah, yeah.
and-
So I take items apart. I get stuff out of the trash. I get stuff donated to me and all sorts of stuff. I'll take it apart and I'll show them like the theory of what everything does. And then if I repair it live on the air, I took a whole truckload full of equipment up to Collin College, which is up in Dallas, and a whole truckload full of stuff that I repaired on the air up to them and allowed them to play around with it, because it'll never go out in service again, but it's still got a value. It's a value to somebody, either as parts or as, a training aid. That's a good one.
So why can't you get these parts that companies are trying to prevent you from having manufactured abroad with a proper medical certification? Say in Taiwan, nothing really stopping you from doing it.
I don't know, let's take that stirrup that I mentioned earlier. It's a device that attaches, it's all metal. It's got one locking pneumatic shock. Like if you have like a screen door on your house, or let's say you have an office chair, you got a little lever that raises you up and down. That's called a locking pneumatic shock. Well, this has the same thing. It's got a lever, you grab onto it. It's got a couple of bolts that hold it together. I should be able to buy that locking shock because they do wear out. It's consumable. I can't buy those parts. Why is that? It doesn't require training. It's 2 screws, Why can't I buy those parts?
Because they got version 2 coming out.
Yeah, right. No, you got 3, 4, 5, But the thing is, it's not because these things are overly complicated. I got arguments against that for every single thing that we do.
Yeah. Which is why we're having this discussion today.
Right. It's a money issue. I've actually had OEMs. So here's something that people don't realize is if you work for a hospital as a biomed, they'll often sell you the parts. But as a third party, I did a whole video because I had a company hang up as soon as they said, "What hospital do you represent?" I said, "I don't represent a hospital. I represent a third party company." As soon as they found out that, she hung up the phone on me. Yeah, she hung up the phone.
So
Just- that's the end of the
I've
conversation.
called manufacturers just to understand like what error code something was.
Yes.
And they laughed on the phone. That like they just literally laughed like after I told them what I'm third party.
Right.
laughed, hung up.
So is that a training issue then? Because if they'll sell it to a hospital who's not trained, but they won't sell it to me who's not trained to them, what's the difference?
Because it's not me just trying to figure out something that benefits the business. We are asking this because we're on site with the device, needing to get it up so they can use the damn thing.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, and then
There was something cool in here too. They were talking about 3D parts, how everything can be replaced with 3D. Yes and no.
Yeah.
Not
we're
medical
not there
devices
yet.
is a little bit different.
We're not quite there yet. Although there are some parts, like, let's say somebody brought it to my attention last week about a striker stretcher, which stretcher is that thing that the patient lay on to migrate them around the hospital. There's cam locks that break. They're plastic. They're nylon. And those nylon locks, they've been out of stock, and you can't fix those stretchers for months now. Well, that's your brakes on the stretcher. Without brakes, when the patient goes to get in the stretcher, it could move, and they could fall on the ground. And their striker stretchers there are, hundreds of thousands of them across the United States? I mean, there's many of those. And the problem is if we can't get those cam locks, maybe 3D printing is the way to do it, because...
open source already has this covered. Companies don't make parts, people do.
The trend might go that way for some things, because like this, I've already reached out to companies like, hey, we need a second source for this. All your eggs in one basket. If it's a part that is in high demand and the manufacturer slows down production, or let's say the contract with the manufacturer ends, now they decide, oh, we don't carry that anymore, so let's just end of life that stretcher. For one little plastic cam, one little plastic $3 part, and they're going to end of life like tens of thousands of dollars worth of stretchers.
I think what he's saying is, why is there not a market for somebody to make that $3 part and make it for like $50, just so that you can save that device?
Now, you do take on liability, of course, but now, rapid prototyping and 3D printing, now we can do nylon 3D printing and stuff, so it's a reality. We can do carbon fiber 3D printing now, or metal. You can do metal 3D printing. How wild is that? There are options now that we never had before. So our industry is going to have to change just like everything else. Our traditional avenues for getting parts, it's going to have to change because supply and demand, right?
If the repair leads to someone dying, should the liability shift to the repairman of the company? Now, I guess I'd ask you to clarify that question. When you say company, do you mean the company that manufactured the part?
That's a broad way to ask it.
Or do you mean the company
though,
that
too.
bought that? When you say company, do you mean hospital or do you mean manufacture the equipment?
That's a good one. Both are culpable.
Mm-hmm.
You as a technician
they
can
will
be
all
sued.
get drug into their
You
into
as a
that
technician
discussion.
can get sued, just like the company can get sued.
The person that repaired it, the facility that owns it, the manufacturer that
nurse.
made it, the nurse that used it,
Yep.
the doctor that operated, everybody will be
Everybody
pulled into that discussion,
will
and
get
it will,
sued.
it's a very lengthy process, but it does happen.
So the answer to that is yes.
I mean, that's why we document everything
Exactly.
excessively. It's so that we cover all our bases. And but that's anything in medical. Everybody has to watch their six when you're in medical, because there's always lawyers that are just hunting for new dollars.
Let's see.
How many comments you got on that post? Wow, you got a lot.
Yeah, I'm just going over the ones that I think are
Like thousands.
The thing is, a lot of them got deleted so fast that
I had my
undid it.
grandma like one of my videos the other day. That was
Oh, that's
nice.
sweet.
Yeah.
That's mighty kind of her.
You're doing a good job, Billy. Something in, Grandma.
Where is this one? I 100% support an individual's right to repair their own property. A medical practice's right to repair their own property, not so much. A corporation is not a person, homie.
Corporation is not a person. Actually, corporations are treated companies are treated as people.
In the U.S. at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that corporations are people, my friend quote from the 2012 Mitt Romney
Yeah,
campaign.
I say actually we are treated the same. We're a single party entity. Well, I mean, that one doesn't even add substance. How do I even argue that when there's not even enough details there to argue?
Lou was trying to get content again. If you really cared, you would do medical machine repairs. I don't know how to fix medical equipment.
See, the
I don't
thing-
fix shit. Here's the thing. Everybody's saying this like you know, you
That's
shouldn't
kind of
just
a
allow
hypocritical
anybody.
statement,
You
though.
shouldn't allow anybody to fix stuff. Like, how dare you allow just anybody to fix things? But
Would you be
then
here,
also, a laptop repair person should be fixing X-ray machines. Like, it's one or the other, troll. Like, it's wrong camera. Like, it's okay. Do you want people that are experts in their field to be the ones that fix things, or do you want, like, you're saying it's wrong? Your idea is it's wrong if just anybody just goes into a hospital and tries to fix stuff. But then simultaneously, the laptop repair guy with no hospital, no biomed experience should be going in there and fixing, like pumps that are pumping people full of fluid, or MRIs or X-ray machines. Like, I should not be the one fixing an X-ray machine. You're gonna wind up like Blight and Batman Beyond if I do any of this. Like, don't. Let's just put this clear. Don't let me do an X-ray machine. I'll probably screw it up.
That's not true.
But yeah, it's one way or the other.
Yeah,
Anyway,
his
you're a
methods
troll,
for
bro.
troubleshooting
Get
are
the
like
fuck out
inject
of my chat.
voltage into it and see what happens. And I'll admit, I've seen that before. If you got to find the problem. But yeah, you're right, man. It is a slight. But would you be here if you didn't care?
I care about the issue, but I also care enough about people being. I don't fix biomed equipment because I have no idea. The first MacBook that I tried to fix, smoke came out of the webcam. Like I've said this many times. The first time
funny.
the way that I learned how to fix something is by destroying the first product. It's a very unique way of learning. That
One of my old chiefs that taught me some things. He was like, if something's broken, you can't break it more. And then he proceeded to
That's
break something
That's
more.
one of my rules.
you can always break something.
You can
more.
break it more, but it's already broken. So I mean, you're not.
I can do it every day. I can break it. Like,
Yeah.
you can have a broken car. You can make it worse. You can have a broken MacBook. You can make it worse. You could have a bad relationship. You can make it. Anything
you can
could
always break it more.
Oh, you could always break it more. Lewis, can you ask him if having more repairable designs, more accessible parts, and schematics, as well as third parties repair them, if these savings will trickle down to us, the patients?
Of course they would. So your number one cost for any medical facility is going to be staff, right? That's your number one cost at every facility. Could you, if you had access to parts and stuff, could you use less staff? It's possible. But at the same time, your second highest cost is what? Consumables, right?
Yep.
And hospitals, they have all these consumables. Those wires I was talking about, the Chinese wires.
Tubing contracts for all
Yeah.
the pumps and everything.
I mean, the consumable contracts are like your number two cost in hospitals. Maintaining your medical equipment, it was 4%. I think they said it was 4% of a hospital's budget was maintaining the equipment. 4%. And that's wild. But imagine if you did training and stuff, you could actually decrease that 4%.
Not to mention, some facilities, some medical hospitals out there will overextend themselves with an inventory that they don't actually need either.
Right.
I mean, I take care of some facilities. They have literal rooms of storage of
backups.
pumps and backups and that
Yep.
they never touch, but yet we still PM them every year because just in case
Right.
somebody walks in there and grabs something. So there's also there's a better way that I think logistically a lot of medical facilities could tailor their budgeting and their use of devices, what they're purchasing, because a lot of times when those discussions are made for purchasing agreements of any device, biomeds typically don't get consulted unless
Right.
they've established that within their particular infrastructure.
But think about it. The reason that we have backups is because sometimes you ship something out to get repaired by the OEM, and some companies take like 3 months to get that unit back. 3 months to get a unit back. I've had 6 months because I had a unit that had a cracked screen. I had to ship it back to Germany. I didn't get it back for 6 months.
Well, you remember during the last year with all the boats and stuff getting caught in the canal, and there was a lot of lead time on just regular stuff. So the AED pads and the batteries.
The microchips problem.
There's,
and whatnot.
I mean, there's still a couple of customers out there. They've had AED pads and batteries on order for the past year,
Yeah.
and this is a life-saving
problem.
device. So, it's lead time is something we struggle with in our industry in general, and it just depends a lot on, the chip shortages and everything too.
That was a real
there's-
problem.
It's impacted the industry hard. I think we're slowly starting to catch up.
Lead acid batteries. We don't make lead acid batteries in the United States anymore. They all come from Asia. So, it was last year and the year before, there was all those ships off of California, and they had a whole bunch of batteries on those ships because they're made over in Asia, Taiwan and China and whatnot. Well, a lot of our medical devices, we have to change out the lead acid batteries, like in anesthesia machines or something. There's batteries that power that in case the power cord gets yanked. Like I said, there's redundancies built into everything.
Are they still blaming?
We have to change out those batteries every so many years. There was tens of thousands of devices that were waiting on batteries because they were all on ships. Because all our eggs in one basket, right? We relied on ships instead of making them domestically. I mean, that's the whole thing is to diversify. You know, your investments, your lifestyle, everything's about diversification. But medical, nah. We'll let them handle it. We'll put all our eggs right there.
I'm still blaming COVID on lead time. I think he's referring to anytime you call a business, a government office or something, and they say, due to the pandemic, we are not able to do X. And then like 2020, get it. 2021, kind of get it. When you call a company in 2023, and like the whole message is, due to COVID, we will not be able to get this done.
I think in our space that kind of went away early last year.
It's resolving itself.
Yeah.
We're still experiencing stuff like the striker parts. They're still saying because manufacturing backlogged like during those years, now they're trying to play catch up. So these parts here, you know, when a manufacturer orders parts, they order them now for next year and the year after.
So
You
even on some of the beds, the newer beds, like for instance the patient side rails, those have to get manufactured per order.
Yeah.
And they don't get manufactured in the United States. They actually come from like Mexico.
Because there's different options and
Yeah.
stuff on them. Yeah.
Is this in Houston? This is.
This is in Houston.
How much are regulations responsible for the cost of doing business in the medical field for you biomed people?
Now,
Yeah.
after the Affordable Care Act, I would say it almost doubled some of our costs. Almost.
How so? What was
Okay. Well, go ahead.
You want me to touch this real quick? So for regulatory purposes, when we talk in ISO certification, meeting regulatory, so Joint Commission, DMV, what comes with that? So a lot of the main thing that I advise a lot of the medical facilities that I'll talk to on the biomed aspect of that is do what you say what you do. What does that mean? Well, it encompasses a lot of things. That is making sure that everything is tailored, matching across the whole fleet of everything you own. Everything is documented correctly. You have to support for instance, our CMMS systems. That's what we use to track all our work orders.
That's the database. Yeah.
The database. So a lot of companies have to invest in these infrastructures, which costs a lot of money. But that's how we not only document what we're doing, but also provide reporting for those agencies. That way they can go back and pull that data. The network component of it as well for cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one that's coming up this year.
Absolutely.
Did you hear that the FDA isn't approving any medical devices at the end of this year if they don't meet their cybersecurity requirements?
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah.
What are the cybersecurity requirements that are needed for it to be approved?
I don't know, because it's been up in the air for a long time. We've been asking the FDA to make some sort of ruling on cybersecurity, you know, and they've been fighting it, trying to sneak it into omnibus bills and stuff. And I don't know the final ruling. I think they just finally, FDA said, this is what we're going to do at the end of the year. We're going to find out at the end of the year, but
How many of these devices are like connected to the internet? Because like as a
Almost
completely
all of them.
ignorant person,
Nowadays,
almost all
yeah.
new ones. I mean, you could take everything from an electric wheelchair could be connected to the internet because it could detect fall hazards or something. You could, your beds are connected to the internet now in modern day hospitals. Every single bed is Wi-Fi connected.
Bro.
Your ventilators, your infusion pumps, your
Dude, they
defibs.
even have sterilizers now. The new mid-marks,
Yeah.
they got a wireless reporting data feature you can add
cool.
on them now.
I didn't know that.
So you know where the printer was on top? They've created a kit where you take that out and you can have your reports and all your sterilization for your spore testing, everything.
Right.
All your different levels directly.
Just logs it. And,
Logs it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's
Almost
stuff
everything.
everything.
I mean, it's every patient monitor is definitely networked nowadays.
the tragic thing is in the distant past, manufacturers delivered with schematics included in Siemens, Elema did this for EEG machines, so the hospital tech staff could do simple repairs themselves. Sad.
It's
So
true.
vulnerability of hacking in medical devices, that has been a huge topic of,
Yeah.
I mean, the past couple of years.
I'd say
if
the last
not
10
less-
years.
Yeah.
We knew that this was
It's
gonna
always
happen.
been a thing. It's more, so everybody's always talked about it, but people are actually paying attention to it now.
It's going to be an interesting year. That's all we can say right now because it's still in its infancy and there's a lot of finger pointing.
So one of the questions, one of the things you said yesterday is a lot of this stuff, by the time you see it, it's 10 or 15 years old. And a lot of
yeah.
the equipment that you use is 10 or 15 years old.
Yeah, so
Like everybody's had this experience of walking into their regional bank and seeing somebody use Internet Explorer 6 with the green start button and going, Oh my God, I shouldn't be keeping my buddy here. So I mean, if all this equipment is connecting to the internet, like what's keeping Windows XP for or something like the hospital equivalent of that running on it? Because like one of the things with John Deere is a lot of the equipment you'll have people talking about is it's using Windows CE, which hasn't had an update since like what 2013.
That's nothing. We have I've seen devices that have Windows ME, and a lot of them still have Windows XP embedded.
Even some of the devices to actually do the software upgrades, you have to run a older system in order to actually do the software upgrade.
And when we talk about bureaucracy, the reason that we still have old OS's operating systems on those devices is because every single software patch that you push out has to be FDA approved. Every single update to that medical device has to be approved, which is expensive. It takes time because FDA doesn't do everything overnight. So let's say,
how do you keep things like if I come up with a hack today?
oh, you'd be good.
How
You'd
do
be
I-
solid. Probably make a lot of money.
No,
Just saying. I mean,
How do you keep how does the hospital keep that stuff secure? Because like a lot of the core contingency of my channel, there are people that are saying, type of people saying, I want to open my new car and rip the cellular modem out of it. Screw these people. I don't want a car that connects to the internet. I don't want any of this stuff to connect to the internet unless it absolutely has to. So the idea of an internet connected hospital where literally every single device there not only connects to the internet, but was designed a decade ago and cannot push software updates quickly like that. That's kind of weird. That's kind of scary. Like the idea that I'm not as scared by somebody fixing a pump. I am more scared about a pump running the embedded systems version or whatever of Windows XP, or the equivalent of Windows XP, getting hacked by some 16-year-old script kiddie that destroys it.
what do you think, man? This is something that we face every day, and we're just, I guess, immune to it at this point because we've been saying it for a decade.
Like I don't mind using old stuff. I have no problem with it, or refurbished. But that does scare me that old stuff that's unpatched can connect to the internet, and that's responsible for anything related.
Part of
to
it too is one that FDA has to approve every software, but can you imagine transitioning everything the way it is right now to the level of where we wish it was, and the logistical
We'd be
nightmare that would infringe upon
Yeah.
every facility across the United States and of course worldwide. There's a reason they haven't done it, one, because they don't want to go through the headache of doing it, but it all boils down to money.
Yeah. And you guys know that the last thing that really smashed the American healthcare system, I'm going to say it's not political. It was the Affordable Health Care Act, because it implemented the digital medical record, which means you have a number associated to you. This might be your Social Security number, but you have a digital medical record number where any hospital can access your information and see everything about you, all right, with the appropriate permissions, yada, yada, yada. But the thing is let's say you yourself were a doctor and you owned a private practice in some small town in the middle of nowhere. Affordable Care Act says that you need to be part of the digital medical record, which is McKesson and all these other giant companies, right? That exploded. Now they're billion-dollar companies. How'd that happen? Well, it's because they mandated that as a practice, if you are seeing patients, you have to be part of the digital medical record. Well, every day, little private practices got bought up overnight, or they had to close.
Why?
Because the digital medical record, in order to be part of that, it cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you had to rewrite your processes in order to handle your prescription recording and all that.
So the reporting requirements for it wasn't a couple of dialogue boxes and type in what.
No. See, the thing is, I'm just amazed that a lot of Americans didn't realize this happened. Your small town public doctor that we used to have when I was growing up, 30, 40 years ago, a lot of those offices closed. It's not because those doctors got too old, it's because it wasn't worth it anymore. And a lot of the other ones got bought up by giant healthcare systems. You got the CHI, Catholic Healthcare Initiatives. You got your Tenet Healthcare. All these, they bought up your local private practice. Your healthcare costs went up because now they control it, right? Monopoly?
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny how that works, huh?
Affordable.
Yeah. So that's what happened across the entire American healthcare system, and we've seen it happen. And your private practice doctors, they had to incorporate themselves into either a conglomerate or close.
So what is it that would make it more difficult for that doctor? Because I'm curious, what to be compliant with that system and to be able to contribute to that system as a small 1 or 2 doctor practice, what changed?
Well, just like any software, you have to buy a license for every user. and you have to probably have a subscription.
So do they like, for instance, you can use any IRC client you want to join IRC. So if you to be a part of the system, did you have to buy software from one company? Or did you just have to buy any sort of software that would interface with their system?
It's like an ecosystem. So if you
I hate that word.
yeah, but it's exactly what it is. So if you, let's say McKesson, I'm going to keep picking on them because it's on the top of my head. If you buy into the McKesson system, all your devices that interface with McKesson, you have to buy the driver specifically made for that device to interface with their system. You have to buy your subscription in order to use that system. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Your staff training can be part of it.
So you have to. So the company that's creating the software to interface with the system, knowing that you have to interface with that system, creates something that's insanely expensive.
Imagine lobbying for something that was going to make you billions of dollars, and then go figure, you end up making billions of dollars.
Is this the equivalent of that, like the idea that companies like Inuit are happy with the tax code being more difficult because you're more likely to pay for something like TurboTax?
That is a very interesting argument because it's true.
Now
it's true.
My contrarian pushback, just out of curiosity, would be why hasn't some other company come out and said, "Wow, these people are charging $10,000 per license per user and then $1,000 a month. We could make an absolute killing if we were willing to just charge a flat rate of $5,000 for the software, or just $50 a month or something." Why hasn't somebody come out and created that, or is it because there's a specific gatekeeping to being able to do that?
Bureaucracy is the gatekeeping. I mean, the fact of the matter is they made their money, so now they're lobbying to have laws that make it hard for competition. I mean, there are no new digital medical record companies that are coming out that I know of.
No, not that I'm aware.
And the fact of the matter is these other ones, they've established their monopolies, their regions of power, and now all they have to do is maintain those contracts, and they tell you what you're going to pay every year. You don't get to choose because it costs millions of dollars to go from this system to that system. So you're going to stick with that system. Once you've implemented it, once you've trained your doctors and nurses and med staff on how to use that system.
How much did the price go up once these systems started to become more popular and more widespread? Like once there's a lot of training in it.
I mean, the thing is they sell you on additions. Like they can do med staff training and stuff like that. Your prescription filling, there's all sorts of like additions. It's kind of like any software. They sell you on the primary package. Oh, you want that feature? I'll tell you what, we'll do that for you, but it's going to cost you this much more. So there's more addendums to your contract, right? And maybe also length of time commitments. So instead of an annual commitment, now it's a 5-year contract or a 10-year contract. I don't really know how it is because there's so many millions of dollars that are involved. They generally keep that to the C-suite. But we all know about it, we hear about it, and we've seen costs go up. So why did the cost go up?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
That's sad.
I mean, if you want to deep dive into the American healthcare system, we're here for you, man. Because we see it. We see behind the scenes, and we see the wastefulness. The wastefulness.
I might need to have a couple drinks for that discussion.
Oh, I know. Let's get some rum. We'll sit down. We'll talk about some of the waste that we've seen. Because just last night I heard about a doctor that smashed open a sterilizer with a hammer. Cost him $20,000 to repair that, but he needed what was in it. So instead of waiting for the biomed to come and open it up, he smashed it open with
one
a hammer.
of the easiest things that I can point to as medical waste is hospital mattresses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, instead of
There are entire landfills out there that hospital mattresses get thrown out for having a tiny little infection point, which there are companies out there that have created solutions to fix that. But, I mean, some of these mattresses, like one Stryker mattress, which only fits one particular bed, can cost like $800 for one mattress.
Yeah.
Is it comfortable?
Just a piece of foam, really.
Well, depends on the type of mattress and what kind of bed and what it does. There are some mattresses out there that actually have an entire computer built into them that run motors and pumps and all kinds of stuff in them. And then you just got a regular, crappy, soggy mattress that you can lay on. But even those, you're looking at several $100s.
Yeah, beds are very smart now. Like they know if you're a patient that you've been laying down, they know that you're likely to have bed sores because you've been laying in this position for X amount of hours. And they have air bladders and stuff that rotate your body so that now they put pressure over here, now pressure's over here.
That is cool.
Beds are insane. And maybe some of those companies are going to be here. Maybe we'll see some of those products today. So, I mean, hospital systems are way more advanced than what most people realize.
My friend back in New York City had a bed that it was like one of these things where there's an app and it would tell you how you were sleeping. And he's on vacation one time and he went to blogging in and he sees like, oh, at 2 o'clock, the pulse in my bed is 140. I wonder what's going. Oh. And then
Oh,
I need to
no.
get one of those.
That's a
Oh, no,
divorce.
that's messed up.
That actually was a divorce.
You know what they need to do is they
Oh,
need to
no.
get a bed that senses when your wife kicks you in the bed. It's like that's why I can't sleep because my wife just loves like kicking me and like stealing my covers.
Can't really blame her, though. I mean, come on.
Is medical equipment expensive because of the label medical grade?
They are made better. Like let's take a medical battery. I did a video where I open up a medical battery and just the monitoring chips that are inside it, the redundancies that are built into it, because there's extra fuses and stuff that are in there. They have thermistors, so they monitor the charging temperature and whatnot. Compared to a domestic battery, so yeah, there's extra things built
I
into
mean,
a lot
go
of
simpler
medical
too, like medical grade power strips.
Yeah.
You know, the
Those are
UL
expensive.
1363, like they cost, like you can spend $200 to $300 on a power strip,
Yeah.
whereas
Excuse
you know
me,
one you
grab
get
that.
from Dollar Tree. There's a reason for that. They have extra levels of protection for medical devices,
Right.
and there's even regulation on surge protectors now in the medical field. So everything is regulated. Everything we're doing full services on power. I mean, essentially, the hospital grade power strip has become its own medical device.
Yep, that's true. And you know what people don't realize is there's rules for rules in medical. This isn't some Wild West that some people, I think, imagine it to be. The power strips that he's mentioning, there's 3 different like national regulations that garner them. And you know, the power strip manufacturer, he's here today. He's got the different ones in there. I'll do a video on them sometime in the future just to talk about the different electrical codes and why you might want to use the different types of strips in your hospital. It's wild. But guys, medical equipment is advanced, but it's not advanced to the point where we can't fix it. Normally, you're changing out boards. So you open up a device, you change out a board. We're not soldering on the boards and stuff. Those days are long gone because that adds to time and complexity. We normally will just open it up. Let's say you got a bad power supply, one of the most common parts to go bad in any device. You're going to change out the power supply, connect it. Since it's opened, we now have to recertify the device, and then you put it back out in service. But if you can't buy that power supply, which is kind of common, then what do? You have to trash the device, right? Or keep it for parts for another device, maybe. What do you think?
It's going to depend, honestly, on what manufacturers play ball with us or not. Some are a little bit more supportive in that endeavor. Some of them have dictated, or I don't want to say it, they have made their devices to the point to where they've made everything proprietary. So there's absolutely no way whatsoever that you will ever get any component whatsoever in this device,
Yeah.
even if it is a bulb.
Yeah, even a button on the front. You know, something that you just literally unplug and plug back in.
I
It's
mean,
everything.
we've had the discussion before about the microscope bulbs.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
with the, you know, they'll actually put a what would you call that? Like a stopgap, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, they put a microchip in there that records the hours, and because they record the hours, they control the consumable, right? And yeah, that one there, I reverse engineered it, and I created a system to rewrite the hours on the bulb. But I mean, if they control the consumable, then they control when you stop using the product. Planned obsolescence.
Which is common in any industry. Everybody's feeling that. I believe that's one of his biggest points that he likes to point to is planned obsolescence. I mean, if you consider that bulb too, they're putting a mandate on when the bulb is going to go bad,
Right.
even though it can go far longer.
Sure.
Not to mention, when you consider the cost of the bulb, these bulbs are ridiculously priced.
$500.
And there's nothing in those bulbs that dictate that price to begin with.
Right.
Not to mention, you can't even replace it. You typically got to send the bulb in, and then they'll send you another one that's already pre-programmed to start the whole cycle all over again.
You know, guys, can I just say something? I don't mean to make this sound completely negative, like it's such a hard life or whatnot. This is one of the best jobs in the entire world. And I'll say that honestly. Like, we actually interface with patients. We can see that we make a difference. So if we seem like we're just rambling, we're just angry about the stuff that we've seen, that's not it at all. We all just really want to make a difference. And every single one of us does. We see it every day. We've had direct contact with patients. You've directly affected patients' lives for sure. And I'm telling you guys, every single day is different. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I have no clue. Tonight, I get called in the middle of the night to go and help a hospital downtown because they're down. I don't know. I've done it before. And I mean, how cool is that you can do that? So guys, don't think this is a negative light, this industry. This is a community, biomeds, OEM. If you were an OEM biomed and I was a third party, we'd probably still go out and have beers together. I mean, that's the way it works.
We support each other.
Right. It's a community. It really
In
is.
fact, I would argue the ISO third party is kind of the bridge between the in-house, the facility, and the OEM, because we work in tandem with both of them to facilitate both their needs, whether we're helping a OEM with covering down a particular service, or connecting medical facilities with an OEM that could provide them a better service. And I mean, I know you don't like ecosystem.
It reminds me of a fruit company and being trapped.
That's his trigger word.
Yes.
But guys, it's honestly, check out being a biomed. Biomedical equipment technology, it'll change your life. You can actually, I mean, think about it. We're a high demand career. You can go to any city in the United States and get a job. And, we actually have an effect on people's lives.
It is.
How do people learn how to do this?
It's a very competitive job.
Yeah.
I mean, typically the numbers change year to year, but they're usually around the 9 to 10,000 in the United States.
Yeah, there's about 9 to 10,000 of us total. And there's 10 to 20,000 hospitals and clinics around the United States. So do the math on that. That's less than one person per hospital. So, I mean...
Where do you learn this stuff?
Well, I mean, most of the people are remote from colleges that offer classes. Texas is the leader in creating biomeds in the entire world. But if people are remote, they can go to College of Biomedical Equipment Technology, cbet.edu. That's a remote school. It's online. You can get your prerequisites, and then you go and you do on-the-job training. Like an OEM or a manufacturer will take you under their wing at that point, and you can learn like a journeyman system, like any other skilled trade. There's lots of avenues to do it. Military, we're both military biomeds. We learned this trade in one of the toughest and most amazing schools in the world, the military school for biomeds. But there's colleges all around the United States that also now offer the program because there's such a need for our career field. And if you think you're in a dead-end job or something, it's not atypical for a biomed to be making $100,000 a year. I mean,
somebody said delete the FDA. No FDA, free for all bio industry, no thanks. I could actually show you what the agency that became the FDA started from. So because you guys brought up the conversation, not me, we're going to show you something. So how many of you are familiar with something called Radithor? Radithor is water with a little bit of radium in it. And this was sold, I guess this is like the Red Bull of the time over here. We have Radithor.
What's here on your chest?
Yeah, certified radioactive water contains
Makes it glow.
radium, and mesothorium in triple distilled water. This is one of those things that'll get anarcho-capitalists to think twice about deleting the FDA. So they were selling this for a while, and one of the main users of it looked like this. This is what happens when you drink radioactive water, my friends.
I would think your thyroid would be
ready?
Get messed up.
Are you ready? Okay, come on. I think my crappy internet here might be saving you. Never mind. There you go. Oh, that's beautiful, isn't it?
Okay.
One sec, I got to remove my picture over here because I'm blocking the best part of it.
That's
I
what
would
I'd
tell
expect.
the guy to chin up, but he
Yeah.
doesn't seem to have one anymore.
Yeah, okay. So the funny thing is, at the time, the people who were getting in trouble, they weren't getting in trouble for selling something that was bad for you. They were getting in trouble supposedly because what they were selling did not have the advertised amount of radium. So they said, I don't know, on the bottle it has I don't remember the exact numbers, 2 milliliters of radium, and it actually only had 0.5 milliliters of radium. It's like, you did not put the right amount of radium in there. You charge your customer for this much radium, and there was the radium girls, and people that were using radium in the ink, and they would lick the brush before they. Oh God, ugh. So yeah. So the thing is, again, as a libertarianish leaning person, every now and then I'll look at these stories, and there's a reason you have the FDA, the agency that became the modern, not the FDA, but the agency that kind of evolved into the modern FDA. That was one of the last straws where it's you know what, F it. And the funny thing is, the people that came up with this, the guy that came up with that was selling this, when he died, they exhumed his body. He was drinking his own product, so he didn't. It wasn't like, aha, I'm gonna kill all these morons by putting radium in water itself. No, like he convinced himself that this is good because he was drinking it. He died. I think he wound up dying of cancer, and then when they exhumed his body, it was it was radioactive 20 years later.
I guess if you're going to commit, go for it.
Who is the bearded biomed? I'll let him introduce himself.
So I am the bearded biomed, the guy that was affectionately called Big J earlier.
It should be obvious which one of us is the bearded one.
I know.
Come on. Who is the bearded? It's definitely him. He's the bearded biomed.
So basically, Bearded Biomed, I do a podcast for my industry, talk about everything that is pertinent to what we do, building awareness. Our field is still very not well known, and we're in dire need of new technicians to join the field. It's a very rewarding profession that just, I'm trying to get the word out as well as Justin. Sit down and talk with key figures all the time about just certain topics, and just kind of celebrate the field in general. So that's just kind of what Bearded Biomed is. And of course, we got Better Biomed Justin that takes it from a completely different approach. I'm more, I don't know, what would you call mine? Maybe just like
you open
between
up a
two ferns almost a little bit.
Yeah. You open up a dialogue on things that are going on in the industry, and you get people's opinions and their field of view. Me, I take things from my field of view, and I don't give a about yours. I mean, no, but that's really how it is. Like, I do things a certain way, and I got really frustrated with why people just weren't advancing themselves. Like, this is one of those career fields that's constantly changing, constantly. So every single night I have to learn. I write down notes, and I go home at night and I research things and whatnot. And so I started doing videos to help teach people, because I think, like, let's take my 8-minute long cardiac output video. I can teach you probably half a semester's worth of stuff in one 8-minute long video, because the efficiency of the video. Now I can also standardize my training. So let's say I have some new biomeds that join my team. I can give them, let's say, a link or a playlist of videos. I say, here, watch these, and now you're going to be to a certain level that I expect you to be at if you're going to be on my team. And that's why I started doing YouTube, and I don't know, now I'm 700 or so videos in, and I got started because of Lewis. Here's the weird thing. I used to watch his videos way back 5-6 years ago when he was just doing regular board repairs. You were working on some really small spaces, and I don't think you even had employees at the time. And I was watching those during my lunchtime, trying to learn about, like, power rails and stuff like that. And that's how I learned that as a viable alternative for educational materials, YouTube is much more efficient. Because in 30 minutes of my lunchtime watching your videos, I was able to excel past my peers. So I thought, wow, that's amazing. And now today, here I am. My YouTube channel has gone not nearly as well as his, but like, most of the people in this building know who I am, and they'll come up and talk to me and stuff. And we get into some really important issues, and I'm a nobody. But because I do videos, because of this guy, and now he drove all the way up here to come sit down with me and do videos. Never would have imagined that. Since
the year that you sent me a letter, I had less subscribers than you do now. So back then I had 1,200. You're like at 12,000 or something.
Yeah, 12, 13,000.
So, like, the thing is, like, you really never know where it's going to go. And the thing
right.
is, you're a specific field. I don't see people doing biomedical repair how-to stuff on YouTube. No. Like, the thing is, you don't have to climb somebody else's ladder. You could. The cool thing about life, you could make your own ladder. Like, brands and component level repair of Apple products was like my little ladder. But, like, right. How to fix biomedical equipment while going over the waste in the system from a common man's point of view. Like, more people are going to be interested in this.
Well, y'all need to look at it too from the perspective of something you did a long time ago sparked somebody else to do something as well. So exactly. you sparked him. You, as well as Sherrill, like, gave me the willingness to get into the space of talking to people. I mean,
it's funny, the chain of events. He encouraged me.
Yeah.
And I encouraged
and
you.
We're all sitting down right now.
And I remember you got me a wireless mic set up 8 years ago, and after my office collected all this equipment, this one kid, Tim Herman, that started his own repair business at 16 from these videos. I remember I re-gifted that setup to him after I had
Very cool.
many of it. So thoughts? Also, both of their channels are down below in the description if you want to find them and learn about all this stuff. Thoughts on OEM repair programs? Are they like monopoly?
Thoughts?
On my industry, the OEM repair programs are absolute garbage. Every single part that we need access to, you cannot get to the program. The whole point is we want to get access to schematics and diagrams. They don't make them available. I want to get this chip. You have to buy the entire board for like $900 on $1,000. Yeah, it's like our repair programs in our industry, they're a complete and utter joke, and you're never going to make your way into them, even if you apply. So what is it like for you?
If you allow them to control the repair parts, they'll control whether or not you use that device. That's as simple as it gets. And when you talk about millions of dollars to re-outfit your hospital, you can understand why they would be motivated to control the monopoly. So, I mean, really, as with everything in life, follow the money, right?
Well, healthcare, just the healthcare technology industry itself was calculated, $4 billion like a year or so ago?
Oh, yeah.
That's only going to
way more than that.
exponentially increase over the next few years, especially when you start integrating software. Everything's just getting software network compatibility added to it. More bells and whistles to make more shit break, right?
I don't think you should ever allow somebody to completely control your options in your life on anything. Not on your car, not in your government, not in your medical. I mean, if you don't like something, you should have an alternative option. And that includes your medical equipment. I mean, because if they control how much a hospital spends, then they control how much you're going to have to spend when you go to the hospital.
So I thought that'd be a good question. Is there a bottleneck in biomedical technician training, i.e. number of schools?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Texas primarily has the most biomed technician schools, but, there are some throughout the United States, and like I said, there are online programs, but the thing is, these schools, like I alluded to earlier, it costs a lot of money to facilitate biomed training because we actually need to have the equipment there for the students to learn. Not to mention, if you don't have the awareness of the program, typically most colleges aren't going to pick up that program unless you really show them why this, is a lucrative industry to get into. There's even a biomed school in Canada, in Ontario.
Yeah.
St. Clair's.
Yeah, I spoke at their college. They're cool
really,
guys.
really cool programs out there. It's just you got to know where to go. The easiest way to, I don't know if there's like a map or anything that shows the different colleges.
If people reach out to us, my email is abetterbiomed@gmail.com. Reach out to me and let me know where you're at, and I'll help you find a school if you're interested. That's no problem.
Biomed sounds cool and a great job, but do you need to be up to date with the government job compliance?
No.
There's.
How about that? No.
We're not. Would they maybe be alluding to like how electricians?
There's no national exam or anything to do what we do. There's no license.
No, that's not what he's talking about.
Okay.
Are you guys purposely? No problem either way. You purposely avoiding the question, or did you read it?
No, I didn't. I don't understand the nature.
Okay, no, he's
understand
asking. Do you need a COVID vaccine to work in this business?
Oh.
He said jab compliance. I'm guessing that based on all the other comments
Depends.
that you already left.
It really depends. Like our company, it was recommended because a lot of the facilities that we go into, they require it for anyone entering.
I got you.
But I've also heard of people that didn't have to get it because of the systems they take care of. So you can be in this field without the vaccine.
You got to remember, some people can also work from home. There are work from home. I'm almost a work from home biomed. So but that's a luxury I have. But
how do you do that, by the way? I'm curious because one of the questions people have always asked me, why don't you have remote work at your company? It's because stuff gets brought. I don't know how somebody would remotely log into a microscope to run a jumper wire on a PCB. How do you fix things remotely?
So it's a timing issue for me because through my networking and through my building of business, I can work from home some days because some days it's just a day. Let's say I'm creating processes for my biomeds, or I'm doing learning modules or something like that for people. There are many aspects of biomed that you might be able to do remotely. Like maybe you're quoting out a facility, so you're looking at their inventory list, seeing what items they have and how much time it'll take to maintain those items, and just doing the math. You can do that from home, And if you got an item, a facility that's got a couple hundred items, it's going to be all day to sit there and try and quote that out. So I mean, there's some things that you don't need to be in an office, and you don't need to be like in a medical facility in order to do certain functions. I mean, there's so many sides to biomed. It's not funny. I know one guy, he quit being an anesthesia biomed, and he went on to be a work from home IT guy who knows medical equipment. So, we're talking about these medical devices having to network with one another. He can offer help desk from home, and he got a pay bump. How crazy is that? I'm so jealous of that dude. I can't even say it.
Those are some good questions.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, you did the school one. In Europe, we have right to repair, and in some cases, the marks don't follow the rules.
Okay. Europe's kind of leading the way on right to repair. You've probably kept up with some of that.
Some, yes. Some has been kind of disappointed. Creating a
Hey, sir. How you doing, man?
You're there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Biomed's a very diversified area. We got some imaging guys. They fix X-ray equipment.
That's what's so cool about our field. You can either work on a lot of different things. You can specialize in something. The Da Vinci robots.
Yeah.
There's technicians that just work on those, that do
$2
those.
million robots.
And then you got somebody that can just work on imaging. You got somebody that can take care of, like, for instance, the position I'm in full regional hospitals, ERs, surgery centers, nuke med labs, clinics, dentistry.
You travel around and you solve problems.
Yeah, where anywhere a medical device is treating a patient for any particular reason. I mean, we can be in any of those. I mean, dialysis. It's such a broad span of like different opportunities that you can get into.
It's some cool stuff.
How do students learn hands-on skills in the CBET distance learning program?
Aha.
Oh, so is that gentleman that runs the school here?
Yeah.
Around?
He owns it.
Yeah, you want to grab him?
Oh well,
If he's
we
available,
can probably stop later, and I'll probably do a video where we showcase some of the
So
crazy
there is
technology.
they are going to be implementing virtual reality training to provide hands-on. However, within everything in our field, everything comes with experience. The main aspect of CBET is they want you to get the base curriculum, so anatomy, physiology, electrical theory, basic networking structure. And then from that point, whenever you do sign on with a company like mine or in-house, that's when the senior technicians, the people that have been doing it for so long, start doing the left see, right see, take them by the shoulder, train them to work on maybe a couple devices and get them to the point to where they know them very well to where they could teach others. So much of what we do just comes with experience. I mean, over all the years, I've been in the field probably about 15 years now, and about every year I end up working on something new that I prior didn't know how to work on before, but I had somebody either teach me how to do it, or I reached out to the manufacturer and they provided me some assistance in learning the device, what's required to PM it, service it, replace parts, that kind of thing. Our field is too robust and requires adaptability that it's impossible for them to learn how to work on everything. But I do see your point with CBET's online school. They're probably not going to get the same level of hands-on tinkering with tools and such as some of the in-house biomed programs will. But for programs like that, again, we're in such dire need of technicians. We got to take what we can. And like I said, a lot of the companies that do pull technicians from CBET, we take them under our wings and we really just pour everything we can into them to get them up to that level. Usually whenever I hire a new grad, I usually tell somebody you're going to be running with your head cut off for at least the first 2 years, because not only are you getting familiarized with different modalities, working on them, repairing them, you're also having to learn how to use that company or that medical facility's CMMS system, which is our work order database. You're also having to learn reporting compliance. You're also, learning the ins and outs of what each individual medical facility needs, because needs are differing between each facility. So I guess the answer is it's a constant learning experience.
Having a social healthcare system doesn't fix much if capitalism is involved. I mean, I think the thing with repairability, the reason that I focus a lot on this is whether or not the taxpayer or somebody paying through private insurance or paying out of their pocket is paying for it. One way or the other, somebody, like, again, if you're throwing away a $40,000 product rather than doing a $200 repair, somebody is paying for that. Whether you're paying for it through your taxes, whether you're paying for it through insurance, or whether you're paying for it just through an insane price out of your pocket. Like the question of who is paying for it, again, there's many debates on it, and that debate should go on. But like, they're trying to make stuff actually affordable so that whoever does wind up paying for it is not paying an insane amount is part of what this is for. EU isn't really better. We have better ARPs, but they often provide crappy work and just at the customer. What's an ARP? Isn't the AARP? That's
I mean, I'm not a
that's
member,
like
but
an elderly lobbying organization.
so oddly enough,
okay.
AARP, you can
Okay.
actually sign up being a young person for it. I didn't know that. I actually read that on a forum the other day.
Oh.
Got to get that AARP discount.
That hand crack. Yes, that was a very. Yeah. What's up?
How are you?
Good.
How's it going?
Do you know Hank Balch by any chance?
Beyond Clean?
Different space, yeah.
Yep.
This reminds me of
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I know Hank.
You do, okay. This is a very cool idea. Podcast, right?
Yes, sir.
Sweet. I'm John. I work for Cognosis. This is Melissa.
Cool.
Nice to meet you.
We are we're an RTLS.
Okay.
Familiar with RTLS?
Yep.
Yep. Do you have one? Are you based at a hospital somewhere?
Yeah, I'm third party ISO.
Oh, you are.
Yep.
Okay.
So we currently utilize Nebula.
Okay. Okay. So that's the same as Renovo and Chromethal and Trimedics and
Yeah, pretty much. We're just a little bit smaller in them.
you are. Okay. Who are the biggies? I mean, GE obviously is the biggest. Agility.
Yeah, I mean the OEM level support, Avante, GE, like I said, Trimedics, Agility, Crothel. What was the other one?
I see.
There's quite a few out there.
They're way
Yeah.
more than I anticipated. Okay. Well, cool. Well, nice to meet you guys.
Likewise.
What is your name?
Chase.
Chase?
Lewis. Lewis.
Lewis. All right. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. So, yeah, the hand crack is just I don't know. It gives me makes me feel nice. You know, it just.
If I did that, my fingers would probably pop off.
Love the plug and the sticker.
Who was that person? Who was that company? I don't know.
To be honest, it's kind of a blur.
Yeah. I just smile and be nice. I don't know. Main problem of the EU is the currently newly implemented safety standards require everything that's used with patients to get recertified.
We use Ebola? Was it something I said?
And he's probably just trolling.
So oddly enough, I actually I was part of the Army contact repair team for biomed company that was sent out to Liberia for the Ebola breakout, which that was one of the most interesting experiences of my life, just because I will tell you that in my humble opinion, I don't feel like the U.S. military effectively planned that well for that mission. We were just out there with no real plan, no real mission. It was very interesting. I mean, it really gives you an idea of like what third world was, just because they didn't have paved roads. I saw a monkey in somebody's window. Like that was trippy to me.
My cat would get along.
There
with
was bed bugs everywhere. It was hot all the time.
Where? What country?
It was Liberia.
Oh.
Specifically went into Senequili, which is like jungle, but it was pretty cool to fly in a helicopter.
How'd you
into
deal with the
that.
bed bugs?
I did not sleep on the bed.
Smart.
Afghanistan. I was there too for a year. From all I can speak on is from the biomed piece of it. We were running highly effectively. I mean, there's all the multiple fobs out there. At the end of the day, we're just there to facilitate a mission and make sure that all the medical devices were working for the patients that were getting treated. I mean, I will tell you, it's probably one of the most heart-wrenching things that I got to see is like little kids in the infirmary with their legs blown off, and like you don't forget that kind of stuff. So whether or not it was the right thing or not, people lost lives, people were hurt. And I don't take that lightly.
Let's see. With AI making big leaps, has AI been making any groundbreaking changes in biomed? ChatGPT is still like Bonzi Buddy to me. Like when I use that, it's not that.
I would say probably not yet, but I could see it definitely in the future. Right now, everything's so highly regulated that I don't know. I don't see AI touching that space for a good while still.
You can't trust the doctors in this country anymore. All the doctors that would stand up against the industry have been eliminated. That sounds like populist anti-establishment brain rot.
Did Justin take off for the day? I just want to know if if he just left us.
I'm gonna go find him. I'm gonna see what stopped him, and probably get stopped myself. Be right back.
All right. Well, while he goes and tries to figure out what happened, feel free to ask any questions of me. I'm an open book. Speaking of, if you're noticing this little kids book right here, it's actually a children's book that I just recently published to teach people about our field. Oddly enough, we didn't have anything like that, and I was like, well, I have a son on the way. He's actually going to be born next month, so I made him the main character, and I get to read to him about what his dad does every day. So it's been pretty cool. Funny repairs we go through. I will tell you, this field, while it can be very fast-moving, fast-paced, requires a lot of you, it's very, very interesting. The amount of experiences and just different stories you walk away with, and of course the relationships with nurses, doctors, the whole hospital staff has been pretty cool. Let me, there we go. My mic's way over here and his computer's way over here. So, scroll up here. Howdy. So, 15 years ago, the story is kind of interesting how I actually got into the field. If you ask most biomeds how they learned about the field, they literally were told by somebody else randomly that happened to know about it. It's my story pretty much ran from I graduated high school, had a full academic ride, went to UTSA, San Antonio my goal was to become a geologist. I like rocks. And that did not...
Just walk off at the hot spot. Yes, I did.
Oh.
I forgot that this is my...
I think they can hear me now.
Sorry about that. My apologies.
But basically, ended up failing out of there just because I was working 2 jobs, living on my own, crappy apartment, trying to support myself. Decided to go ahead and join the Army just because the opportunity to get education, pay for it, have a stable income, that kind of thing. All I knew is I wanted to fix stuff and possibly something in medical, and the guy suggested 68 Alpha to me, and I was like, sign me up, sounds good. 8 years later, went through one station at Fort Hood my entire 8-year tenure of military service, which, some people probably would say Fort Hood isn't the best place to get stationed at, but anywho, after that, decided to get in the civilian sector, and ever since then, I've been working for the same company, but I mean, full time, just been a biomed. I know somebody had asked, what's a typical day for a biomed like? So that can range a little bit depending on if you're an in-house person working in a facility under one banner hospital, or if you're an OEM technician. I'll do my best to describe their situations. But from an ISO perspective, from a third-party company such as mine, so I'm actually in a management position, so I have several technicians under me. However, I still am full-time in the field. So typically my day will involve getting up. We clock in and out through our phones. I go through all my emails and see if service calls came in, because our dispatch system goes directly to our email for us to reach out to clients or whatever repairs or services they need. That's for immediate concern stuff. At the beginning of the month, we get a schedule, and we plan out what preventive maintenance inspections we're going to do for whatever facilities we have, and we just kind of fit it all in there. So one day I could have where I'm at one site doing preventive maintenance inspections all day, just because it's a large facility, because I take care of facilities from 600 pieces all the way down to like a handful. So for those days that I have scheduled, I'll be all day going into different departments doing those services. And other days, I could just be running service calls all day. So I could go to this clinic to repair an exam light, go to a surgery center, do an incoming electrical safety inspection for a any kind of surgical device like a lithotripper or maybe a RF generator, something like that. Because any medical device that transfers to different facilities has to be electrical safety tested per standard. So from there, I might then go to a regional hospital, and then they got a broken bed, and I got to repair that. And if they have parts on hand, great. If not, then we're calling, ordering parts, making the work orders, doing all the documentation at the end of the day. So every day is different. I cover the whole DFW area, and I could literally drive from 30 miles a day all the way up to like 200 miles a day. It just depends. Manufacturer, theirs is similar, just because typically you'll have like a couple Tech 1 positions, like lower techs under a supervisor within that region, and they'll either be planned services to, like, let's say, do a PM on whatever specialty they might have. So if they're an ultrasound tech, or if they're a CT or MRI, some of those PMs can take several hours. So they'll plan those accordingly. And of course, if they get a dispatch that gets called in for service because it's under contract, it'll be the same deal. So the OEM service technician and the field service technician, kind of their days can be similar. However, more than often than not, the field service technician like myself is going to work on many different things, go to many different places. I will say the OEMs will probably get more fly time, though, because those regions typically get spread into multiple states as opposed to just one localized area, depending on what you're working on again. In-house, typically for an in-house biomed position, you're going to have a set team within that facility. So depending on the size, you could have 5 techs all the way up to 40. It just depends on how big the system is. And usually a tech is, depending on if they're specialized in something, they're just going to do PMs on those particular devices, or they're going to be assigned a particular department. So like this tech is responsible for ER ICU. This tech is responsible for general PACU nursing kind of deal. This tech takes care of surgery. So yeah, they're all a little bit different, but I was basically just explaining to them like what's a typical day for biomed, and I went through ISO, OEM, and in-house.
How does it feel that your
That's why I
arm
haven't
is,
stopped talking.
There's no typical day.
how does it feel that your arm is half the size of my torso and you could probably bench me? What is your
I think
deadlift,
he's
bench, press,
talking-
and squat?
I think he's talking about you.
No, I'm the smallest out of all y'all. I used to be
So,
way bigger, man.
so to
but
be fair, I actually haven't worked out in like 3 months, just because I've been trying to get ready for this baby and work and everything else. But
Last known max deadlift, squat, and bench press for the audience.
it's been so long, man. I mean, there's been a time where I was deadlifting 5, squatting 450 and benching at least 350. And that was about a year or so ago. But I don't know. Those ego lifts are kind of past me nowadays. Now I just want to look good in a t-shirt.
You're getting older, man. You're getting older.
Yeah, let's see.
OEMs can make more salary-wise. It's just dependent on, a lot of different things, like what kind of device you're working on. Obviously, probably a CT or MRI technician is going to make more than somebody on a not lesser specialty, but something that's less involved, takes less time, less amount of training. And then also, typically those jobs that are going to pay you more, well, there's also a lot of caveats and conditions that come with that. You're probably going to be traveling a hell of a lot more than some other.
But then you get travel pay and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a complex answer. But imagine that every single job is going to start low, and then sky's the limit. All of them.
Yes. I mean, when I first started, I was probably about $22 an hour. Mm-hmm. But that was coming in civilian sector like a Tech 3. Now Tech 3s are making in Texas like
85. Yeah, 85.
Yeah, the world's different. I mean, I know biomed directors, when they first entered the field decades ago, they were coming in at $10 an hour.
Jeez.
So the pay has increased over the years.
Yeah.
I mean,
but if you fix like imaging equipment, X-ray and stuff, those guys all make over 100.
I mean, I think pretty comparable, at least for Texas. You could probably get an entry-level Tech 1 position, 50, 60, somewhere there, beginning?
My last Tech 1 position I offered up around Dallas, I think we offered him at 63.
Yeah. And like I said, that's Tech 1. You start getting Tech 2, Tech 3, specialty tech, and then management. That's when you can start going up and definitely hitting six figures. I'm not there yet, but someday.
Close soon, right? But
sorry, excuse me.
It's all good.
I just want to say hi. I'm all sea change. You actually did sort of the slush. Yeah. You know, okay.
I see it.
What else we got?
How ahead of time you were. And actually,
How old
by
is the
doing that
card
video-
even?
So we've done 18 on the basic, last 18 battles.
A lot of jokers going.
What are the most expensive pieces of standalone biomed equipment, X-ray, MRI?
So your rad rooms, those can get pricey. Of course, your CTs. I mean, you can get CTs that start at 200 grand and go up. Of course, MRI. The thing besides the actual equipment itself, the cost really accrues with these devices is all of the utilities on them as well. The amount of power and just everything that's involved in maintaining a CT device, for instance, an MRI, like that's thousands of dollars for a facility because this unit's being ran multiple times a day. You know, there's more costs involved with, I would say, mostly with CT, MRI than any of your typical devices, just because they require so much more. Plus, you got all of your, you got to have your lead-lined walls. Why did I buy it? How would someone without experience in electronics get started in biomed? What kind of... Okay, so if you have no experience in electronics whatsoever, that's fine. I had no experience in electronics when I first started. Of course, I went through the military biomed program, but the CBET school, along with like Collin College, Mensa, St. Clair's, all the biomed courses out there, there should be, unless I'm just missing one that doesn't, there should be an electrical theory curriculum that's built into the course. Along with that, there's also going to be just different levels of training that are involved. Like I said, you'll have, typically the way the course structures are built, you'll have, depending on the type of modality, so like your surgical devices and patient monitoring. So, for instance, you'll have some set modules for just patient monitoring, to where they'll have you go through the electrical theory of it, the usage of it, Of course, in our field as well, you have to have experience and knowledge of anatomy and physiology. So there'll be curriculum on, understanding how the heart and the lungs work, because a lot of the equipment that we service, you have to understand what the machine's doing in order to properly assess if the machine is working correctly or not. And like I said, typically with each course, they're going to break down based on what type of modalities you're working on. But if you have no experience electrically, that's fine. The electrical theory is just there to get you to understand how current flows, AC, DC circuits, batteries, just everything involved with that. But nowadays, like Justin was alluding to earlier, back in the day when me and him first got training, we were doing circuit level troubleshooting. We were soldering, desoldering resistors, and learning MOSFETs and AND gates, all that kind of crap, which it's not necessarily needed anymore, just because the industry has moved to basically board swapping. So as long as you basically can understand what the general function of a device is and how to properly troubleshoot what function is or is not working, and go to that particular board or component that drives that function, then you would replace that part. So I would estimate, just because you don't have electrical background right now doesn't mean that you can't get into biomed.
Right. Well, guys, I'm going to have to jet, because I'm speaking in 1 hour, and
Yep.
that's going to be wild.
So quick question. Somebody's the college that's in Dallas, I said Mensa. Am I saying that right? Or
Collin College.
I'm sorry, it's not Mensa. I meant Medicine. That's the college. I don't know why I said Mensa.
There's
My bad.
Texas has got several colleges, and I mean,
TRTC, Medicine, Collin College.
This is the medical
CBET,
capital of the world.
And then, of course, the Tri-Services U.S. Military School.
Mm-hmm. And actually, here comes Bill. And here's the owner of the CBET Online College. You guys asked questions about how do you get into biomed. Well, these guys offer an online program, especially for the people that are remote. And if you're military, they offer financial aid and stuff. Trust me, Bill can explain it much better than me. But,
we got people asking about biomed and how to get in.
And the schools.
I
gotta go put my fancy suit on.
I have medical training, and I was in Air Force electronic repair tech. These are good backgrounds for technician school.
Take a call, boys.
So,
Sir, good to have you back.
thank you. Thank you so much.
We are
So what are
switched
some of the
over.
questions that they're asking?
I have a paramedic, I have medical training, and I was in Air Force electronics repair tech. Are these good backgrounds for a technician school?
Absolutely. So,
Would you be able to, sorry, to be so rude, can you introduce yourself to
of
the
course, I
audience?
apologize for that. My name is Bill Bastick. I'm the founder of the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology. It's an online biomedical school, and a lot of people thought back when I created it that it would not work. But from the time that it's of its inception to where we are now, we're the largest biomed school in the country, and we have a certificate program, an associate's degree program, and we're about to launch an IT program that complements the biomed side of it. And to add to that, we're very proud to be adding virtual reality, which will be the hands-on portion now. So people can't say you can't learn anymore if it's just online and not hands-on. We will have all that through the VR. The way the program works is once you complete your program, you go to a hospital that we assign you to and help you get set up, or an independent service organization, and through our partnerships we have throughout the country, they provide the hands-on training for you based on the information that we give them where you need to be trained. We've got about a 90% job placement ratio now, and we have about a 90% people who pass the course. And there's always that variance of 10% of life happens. But yeah, that's the background that you have is excellent on that.
Yesterday we were talking about all the comments that I was reading in that thread, and I went over all those comments with everybody else here, but you seem to be the most passionate about it when you were talking about the real cause of actual patient deaths. Would you mind reiterating a little what we were talking about yesterday?
When you say the actual real cause of patient death?
Well, yeah, the people in all of these threads were talking about how, improperly repaired device will kill somebody and all this nonsense.
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to back up a little bit. You have to understand SMDA, which is the Safe Medicals Device Act of 1990, that the government initiated. And pretty much we're all aware of that, and we know how to work on the equipment. The way that there's some acronyms I'm going to throw out, but I'll give you the definitions. You have ISO, which is Independent Service Organizations, and OEM, which is the original equipment manufacturer. And the original equipment manufacturer does not want third-party companies working on their devices. So what they try to say in the medical field is that for life safety, it should only be the OEM. And based on the way we have our quality set up and the criteria of our processes, as long as we do the PMs to the manufacturer standards, there's no difference as who works on it as long as they're trained properly. The way most of these people become trained is, I'll use myself as an example. I worked for an OEM on hematology equipment. When I quit that company, I was certified to teach other people based on my training and education. So I taught other people how to work on the medical devices, and this enabled hospitals to take them off contract and do them in-house. It works the same way. The OEMs do not like that because it takes revenues away from them, and they inflate their prices anyways on their service side if they don't have any competition. So the right to repair enables all of us to work on whether it's medical devices, cars, phones. And one of the biggest arguments I would propose is if you bought a car and someone told you couldn't work on your brakes or something, and that's not allowed, it's your car, you should be able to do that. Well, that's what's happening in the medical field, but they're trying to use, when I say they, the OEM, is trying to use life safety in regards to saying there's more jeopardy when an independent service organization works on medical equipment than them, but there's no data to prove that. In reality, there's probably more data to prove that actual harm that was caused by equipment, I'm not saying the engineers, equipment, was still under the contracts when the OEMs had them. So they can't really support that evidence, they just state that. And the rhetoric that they have is biased on their side. So I'm an advocate for the right to repair. And as long as you're trained properly, and you're signed off by the correct people, there's no reason you should not be allowed to work on that equipment. I hope that answers that.
Yeah, amazingly. Thank you. So tell me more about your school.
All right.
Because there are like 3 questions you're saying, I want to do this as a job, I'm interested in this, how do I get into this?
All right. It's real simple. You just go under cbet.edu, and everything is right there on the website. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you don't have any money. We're one of the only schools that does 0% financing at 100% minus the deposit, which I believe is like $750, and your payments are like $100 after that, $100 to $150 while you're going to school. You will get a job if you do everything you're supposed to in our program. We'll pretty much guarantee you a job. We're not allowed to guarantee you because of accreditation standards, but everyone that's graduated our school that wanted a job has received a job. Our industry is in a huge demand. There's a huge shortage because we did a poor job recruiting in our industry. So right now we have all of us old people who are getting ready to retire, but no one to take our places. So we're at critical shortage right now. And the more people we can get trained up, the better.
Yeah, Justin was throwing out some numbers earlier, and my apologies if I got them wrong. Anybody who can rewind can correct me. He was saying something along the lines of like 15 to 20,000 hospitals in the country and about 9 or 10,000 people in this industry. So you have less than one biomed for every hospital in the country.
No, those numbers are not correct. We probably have close to about 35 to 50,000 biomeds across the country altogether. And we're probably missing some numbers too because I don't know we're not including OEMs. That's probably just biomeds. So there's a huge gap. And right now what's happening is in the past when you learned biomedical, you came in with a toolbox and you had a hammer, screwdriver. Hopefully you didn't use a hammer too much, but you'd have more of the conventional style tools. As this equipment is more sophisticated, you have to know how to program, network, and integrate all this equipment. So it's leaning towards IT. So you have to learn IT as much as you do, the troubleshooting on the mechanisms.
You're talking about how, like your generation did not get enough people involved and excited about this so that there'd be somebody to pass the torch on to. How did you get into this?
Ironically enough, I knew nothing about this industry and wanted to join the military back in the day. And my father was the one who said, go into biomed. And I said, what's that? I didn't even know back then. And then when I found out about it, I enjoyed it because you never have the same day at work every day. It changes. There's thousands of different pieces of medical devices. As long as you become proficient on 25 to 30, it doesn't matter what manufacturer. There's always resources to learn how to repair that. But we're trying to get the word out by doing this right here, the YouTube channel. the trade shows. We're going to high schools and middle schools. Chase wrote a children's book to get to even the younger children to understand what biomed is about. So hopefully, just by more exposure, more people will be aware of this industry and have an interest to get into it. It's a very fun industry. It's very technical. It's very challenging, but it's rewarding too, because you're making a difference. You're helping the doctor in the background by making sure the medical devices are 100% safe to work on and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, like there was this kind of happiness when it's not just, I'm just fixing a board and it works again. When you get to see somebody like hugging the receptionist at the front of the store because they say, you got my wedding photos back. I thought that those were gone. I should have backed those up. You know, I was 15 years old, and thank you. Like when you get to see that, when you know that somebody is healthier, when you know that a surgery went properly because of your work, or that somebody did not have their medical procedure delayed because they had to wait 2 or 6 weeks for the manufacturer tech to come out and be able to actually fix something.
Yeah, no, that's true. There is a story I'd like to share with you on that. I have a friend, he'll be here at this show. He was working on anesthesia equipment. He was tired, but he decided, he didn't take any shortcuts. This is critical equipment. This is the stuff that when they put you to sleep when you go for an operation, that's the anesthesia devices that they use. And he just worked it the right way and did the procedure the way it was supposed to be done. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, his daughter had emergency surgery, and that was the device that they used to put her to sleep. And he knew that device was going to work fine because he did it, and he attested. He said, I backed this up with my kids' work, having to go under on it. So
I think that's what's so offensive when you read these comments saying that these people are they're just trying to save money here and there. They're just trying to make a quick buck off of screwing somebody. And the stories that you hear where somebody fixes a device that then gets used on their own family. Like there's a level of pride here in the work that we do that kind of crosses industries. Like, when I'm running a jumper wire under a BGA chip, even though it's for a device, and this is separate from your industry altogether, even though I'm working on a device that I don't even like, I want the work that I do to be something that I'm proud of 10 or 20 years later.
Absolutely.
For somebody to know that they went here, this is fixed right. If somebody looks at that under a microscope 40 years later, I want them to notice that this jumper wire was ran properly.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense of pride in the work that repair techs like on this level do that I don't think is understood outside of the industry.
No, I agree with you.
So somebody said, you may have answered this. What sort of cost education-wise are you looking at?
Cost education-wise?
Yeah, so you're talking.
Okay, for the associate's degree, it's about $23,000 to $25,000 on the high end. All right, it just depends on what the lab fees are, what classes you're taking, and then on the certificate program, it's about a little less than half of that. The good news is this: when we had people graduate our class from the 6 to 7 month certificate, they got jobs starting at $50,000, and the ones with the associate had jobs starting. Probably from 60 to 65, not all of them. The mean is about 45 to 50 now, which jumped up a lot, but that's not bad for a 7-month investment in education on a return on your money. So if you take education and the cost and compare it to a traditional 4-year school, you're saving at least $75,000.
Let's see.
And you don't have to live in a dorm either.
How much of the software in biomedical equipment is essential, and how much of it is there to make it more difficult to service and repair or maintain a device, or to generate more profit?
Well, that's a very good question, by the way, because it varies from medical device to medical device. Most of the software that we already have the passcodes, because when we purchase it, we get that. The problem is that the OEMs want to sell their equipment as much as they can. That's how they make their money. So they set it up where they almost force you to buy the new software upgrade within 5 years. But what we're trying to do to offset that is on the upfront negotiations of the purchase, we usually say any upgrades of software is going to be included with this device as long as this device is active in the hospital. So there are ways to go around the OEM, and it's all upfront on the sale. So if you don't do your negotiations correctly, that's when the right to repair can be a problem for a hospital.
Yes. If I have my associate's AAS, or in computer electronics engineering technology, what would it take to get into this field?
You could probably go through our 6-month class that we have just to get your certificate, because you already have your degree on that. And that's all you need. Once we educate you on that, you'll be ready to go and ready to work in a hospital or an independent service organization. And believe it or not, even the equipment manufacturers hire people from our school.
An industry that will still exist in 10 years, can't say that about most anymore. Huh. Yeah.
Yeah, this industry's not going away. It's just changing. You have to become network savvy as well as troubleshooting savvy on both sides.
They're bringing up the Therac 85. Okay, I don't work in this industry, but I know what you're referring to.
Which one are you talking about?
Let's see. Is that the radiation machine? It was like some targeted radiation machine that... Oh, the Therac... No, Therac 25, not 85. That was... Am I thinking of the right thing here? Yeah, okay, this was a computer-controlled radiation therapy machine produced by Atomic Energy of Canada in 1982 after the Therac 6 and 20. It was involved in at least 6 accidents where patients were given massive overdoses of radiation because of a software glitch.
I can't speak on that because I'm unaware of this. You have to realize that was 1982, and there's million devices that are out there now, and you will have incidents, but I can't speak on that.
Yeah. I remember reading about that a long time ago because it was like supposed to be one of the worst known cases of a software glitch in medical technology to ever exist.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do they lock down hospital hardware to only allow repairs when using the correct software?
No, they do not. It just depends on what equipment you're working on. I guess the more sophisticated equipment makes it more difficult to work on the medical devices, but the independent service organizations that have been around a while and have the subject matter expertise usually have workarounds on that, and they can still get in. They usually get the passcodes from the hospital operator.
Because one of the problems we have in our field is they'll make it so that you can replace a part, and even if you take an OEM part from another one of this device that you purchased new, every part inside the device has a serial number on it. So when you put the new part in, it won't work unless you use the manufacturer's software to pair it. And the manufacturer's software is only made available to people the manufacturer wants to make it available to.
Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen because it's starting to happen more and more the more sophisticated we get with our computers. Again, all that can be negotiated upfront on the sale of the medical device, so there won't be any issues when it comes time to repair the equipment. And the best thing that we can do for our industry right now in the hospitals is to educate the hospital leadership teams that when you purchase this equipment, which is done on the capital committee, part of the negotiations should include the biomed department to say, this is what we need to service it to help keep the cost down when the warranty part is over. Or you negotiate an extended warranty, 2 to 3 year warranty, so you're not paying for the service.
How often are inexperienced negotiators involved in that process to where they wind up buying something where they didn't negotiate these terms, so they're stuck with insane service costs later on?
I can't put a percentage on it. Let's just say it's a lot. So it happens a lot, and that's why education is so important. The hospitals that I work with, I educate them ongoingly because you have turnover to deal with, so they have a new purchasing person. And what happens in hospitals, sometimes you'll get a director of one department who wants this gadget because the doctor wants it, and they end up purchasing it without giving us a heads up. So now they purchase the device, negotiate it nothing, and we're stuck with whatever the terms of the contract are.
So the OEMs, I imagine, are not exceptionally happy when they see you on the other side of the negotiating table at one of these meetings.
No, they are, because they want to make the sale. It depends what part of the OEM. It's usually the sales part when the OEM's there. And when they're there, they're open to whatever. They want to make sure they get the sale, they get paid commission on that, and they need to push their units. So
But you're there to protect the hospitals.
I'm strictly there to protect the hospital's best interest. You know, I'm an advocate for all hospitals.
How do hospitals find you and know that you exist? Like, as a purchasing, if I'm a purchasing agent at a hospital and I'm clueless to all these items that I should be negotiating, like, how do you wind up meeting those people and telling them, by the way, you're throwing millions out the... Or is it just like kind of a door-to-door salesman approach where you'll show up and you'll say, by the way, you're probably throwing millions of dollars into a shredder? Like,
it's a little bit of both, and the reason why I say that is because the school now is 5 years old, and I've been really focused on growing the school. So the service company I have, I just let it idle for a while. It's still doing well. So now that the school's on autopilot and I got the good team there, we're going to go and start going back to the service side of it. The way I do it is I find out where the C-suite has their trade shows, what meetings they go to, and I present over there on budget. So we'll discuss finances. How can we reduce your finances? Not only do we teach them how to reduce their budget, we also teach them how they reduce their budget while increasing their quality. And people say, well, how can you do that? And it's by the DNV standards that we use. We're certified on that. That's one of the accrediting agencies for hospitals. They're up there with the Joint Commission, who both report to the CMS. So used on the ISO standards, we're able to take these processes, make the hospitals a lot more efficient, thus reducing their budget.
You sound incredibly competent.
I've been doing this for a long, long time.
This is like a high compliment. Like you just,
Well, thank you.
like you, because I'm used to dealing with, in my industry, you'll hear the industry lobbyists speak that are leading off of a script and then going, they don't even believe what they're saying, and then you hear the repair technicians show up and just like wipe the floor with them. It just, I get that same feeling from you. You just like, you've been in this for a very long time. You know what you're talking about, and you really.
Well, I've seen it on both. I've worked for the OEMs. I worked for the in-house. I worked for the ISOs. And that's why I started my own company. I figured out a way to customize what the needs were out there and make it specific to each hospital. So every hospital that I work for, I don't have a certain budget. I ask them what budget they need to be at, and we get there. I like to start from a zero budget, taking, all right, here's what it's going to cost to run it, and then be accountable for every dollar spent. And if you can do that, and you know your process and the way things are supposed to be done, and you train your staff that way, you never have to worry about anybody telling you, you're spending way too much money. Everything is justified, because there's things called, if you get for example, lightning hits the hospital, things you can't control, an act of God. There's a variance there, right? So you write up a variance report based, all right, we went over budget by 50,000, but here's the reason why. And they know, they have insurance for that, most of them. Some of them don't, they have their own insurance. They do risk assessments, right? And they say, well, that's a chance we took, we'll eat that. But so they'll say, all right, that was the only time we had a glitch. The rest of the time you've been trending on budget or under budget, and we're happy. So, and if anyone ever challenges me and says, I don't believe you can do what you do, I show them all the numbers I have from all my accounts. I'm very transparent. I have no problem opening up my books and my work history to anybody. And this way, if they want to challenge me, data speaks for itself. I don't even have to say a word. So.
How many companies are out there like yours where you're going into these hospitals and making these presentations, and how it is that they can be saving money while being more efficient?
Well, all of them try to do that. All the even the OEMs go out there and try to do that, and they all sing the same tune in a different way. But I do it based on formulas that the hospitals set for themselves. Like most of them don't want to spend more than 10% of total capital equipment, and what that means is, let's say they have $100 million worth of devices in the hospital that they bought, and that's going to be a large hospital. So with that being said, their budget shouldn't be more than $10 million, and that's a good budget.
That's annually?
Annually, okay. Correct. Yeah, 10%. But what I do from there I start fine-tuning the processes, and you can even tweak it down. Right now, with the hospital that I have, I'm not going to mention the name on it, but I'm running at about 4.8%, and that's very efficient. I was surprised myself, but we've had a real good year this year, and we even surpassed the budget that the hospital put on us. We came under that. And the bad news about that is now the hospital doesn't want to give you that same budget the following year. You have to justify why you're asking for X amount of dollars for the budget every year.
Did you ever see the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas?
I don't think I did.
It's a very good movie. But at one point, they're talking about the contractor for the city, that if they use less money this year than next year, then their budget will be reduced. So they purposely find excuses to dig up roads that are good and fill potholes that don't exist, so that they will have the same budget next year.
Yeah, we don't do that. We try not to do that. What we do is educate our CFO and say, instead of based off of a 12-month budget, let's do it 18 months, because a lot of times when units fail, they fail on time waves. They might be good for 6 to 9 months, and then after the 9 months, you might get a few hiccups where you have a spike, and you've got to spend $50,000-$60,000. This is outside of the electrical strike we talked about. And so once the CFO understands the way the budget truly runs, and that's where relationship building comes in place too, they have a trust with you, and they know if you tell them this is the budget, they trust you, that's what the budget's going to be.
Now, one question I had with the other two gentlemen, I was reading through some of the comments on this. One person who sent a pump in to get repaired with the manufacturer, they destroyed the pump, they cut it up to bits and pieces, and then they sent it back to him. So they quoted him, they said, you can send this for repair. They had the serial, all the information, and they sent it back to him destroyed. And some of the comments that were showing up on that, I just kind of wanted to get your reaction to.
Okay.
So you have You have a public video of a biomed tech trying to put an end-of-life medical device back into service. Right to repair is important, but not at the cost of patient safety. You're protecting the profits of the hospital over the safety of a patient. You're a bootlicker. Good job making sure that money goes right to the C-suite at the hospital. These are the comments that were like rising to the top in terms of criticizing.
Well,
like they were saying, they're right for cutting up that pump and destroying it.
Okay.
What's your reaction to that?
My reaction is this. They might have thought they were right. However, they did not have the right to destroy property that did not belong to them. What they should have done was send a letter back to whoever sent them that pump and say, just so you know, this device here can be a patient safety hazard that can cause harm. We recommend that you take it out of service and don't use it again. They did not have the right to cut the wires or whatever they did. Can you imagine if you brought your car into shop and all of a sudden it comes back and someone decided to take it to a junkyard and squash it because it said your car didn't pass the safety inspection for this year and it was a driving hazard because you had some problems with it. Nobody has the right to damage other people's equipment. They should have communicated effectively and said, here's what our recommendations are, and it's your responsibility to do what you think is right now. That's the way that it should have been handled.
I agree 100%. Yeah, some of the comments on that were very, very interesting.
And I think some of the reasons they comment that is they don't have all the information in front of them. And it's easy to take the side of patient safety, which I always err on the side of patient safety. If you walk into my shops, you'll see a big sign, patient safety is everything. And that's why we're DNV certified. That makes sure that we're in compliance. Every device we work on is 100% in compliance with the DNV standards, the Joint Commission standards, which falls under CMS, and that's regulated by the government. So there's no reason to go against the right to repair. Everybody should have the right to repair if it's done properly.
Yeah, because a lot of the people that were criticizing this are making it sound like you don't care about patient safety. You care about, well, if I could save $50 here, let's do it. So
Absolutely not. That is not true. There are so many times where I would say this needs to come out of service for whatever reason and make sure it stays out until it's either 100% repaired correctly. And just so you know, I want everyone to know this. Whenever we have a patient that was supposedly harmed by a medical device or could have been harmed, we deactivate that device, we send it to the original equipment manufacturer and have them do an evaluation on it to tell us if it was operator error, if the device itself malfunctioned, and when I say or technical area based on us. And then we get those reports back. And 95% of the time, it's usually operator error where something wasn't performed correctly. You know, they have a lot of PRN nurses or staff that are not trained proficiently on something and might have made a mistake. And there are times where it is the medical device's fault, and there are very few times where it is the technician's fault, whether it's the OEM or the ISO. So we are human, mistakes do happen, but that's why we have our processes in place to reduce that.
Yeah, Justin was saying that they both got a laugh when they heard that patients are dying because patients are dying because of user error and malpractice, not because a device was fixed improperly.
Right. Yeah, and there's we're not going to call anyone out, but there's many case studies that we have, and I use them for education purposes. I'm not going to do it over the airwaves.
Yeah. So somebody said you are choosing to save a hospital a few $100s over replacing a device that has the potential to kill someone if it malfunctions. If it's at the end of life, replace it. Medical devices are not phones or tractors. They're not meant to be used and repaired until they are dust. Riding them until failure is how people die.
This might be the same person that wrote the other one.
Yeah.
No, we're not choosing to do that. If there's a medical device that's end of life, and let me explain what end of life means to an original equipment manufacturer. End of life means that they no longer want to support it, and they're not going to make any more parts for it, and therefore they want to sell a new medical device, okay? And hospitals, a lot of them don't have that much money, especially in the rural areas. What we're challenged to do with now is find out if we can make sure we get certified parts from other manufacturers who stockpile some of them, from the older equipment. So when a device goes deactivated, there's still good parts in it. We take out the good parts, certify them, recertify them, and then we're able to reuse them to keep that medical device alive longer. We never do it on the case of patient safety. If it passes the calibration checks and the preventive maintenance checks, it'll go back in use, and it's not end of life until we say it's end of life. But everything we do is so heavily regulated, we're doing it the right way, and it's endorsed by the DNV, the Joint Commission. They see the way we do our work, and they sign off on it, they know.
What is the Joint Commission? Just because since I don't know a lot of the terminology and some of my audience may not.
The Joint Commission is an accreditation organization that's not for profit. The DNV is the same thing. It's an accreditation organization that's for profit. Both of them use different strategies on inspections. The DNV is a risk-based inspection agency. They go off of the physical environment and the patient safety. And the Joint Commission goes off of patient tracers from when the patient went in, and then patient safety as well. They use EC standards, where environmental control, and DNV uses SR, which is service requirements, to have the proper procedure set up. I hope that explains it better to people. We're not trying to save a buck for the hospital. If anything, we'll always tell the hospital you need to spend a little bit of money here to reduce your liability on that.
James says it's kind of ridiculous that a bolt costs $50 for an IV pull because it's got to be certified. Can't go to Lowe's and get a 50-cent one. At least that is what a biomed told me.
Okay, there's things. Let's use extension cords. All right, in the hospitals you can't just use any extension cord. They're called RFTs. They have to be attached to a medical device where you have to be able to take it off with a tool, and then you have to be medical grade. And pretty much what medical grade means that it's been certified that you can use it up to 75% of its maximum output, whatever the amperage is that they have on it. So, yes, I agree with you. It's frustrating that you can't go to Lowe's or Home Depot, but let's say we did go to Lowe's and Home Depot. Now you have a patient safety violation because that device was not certified. So we get the certified medical grade one. Yes, it costs more. So you can't have it both ways. You have to do it the right way.
Yes. What we got here? Let's see. I'm just reading through the questions that are popping up along with it.
Sure.
Yes.
These are all good questions, though, and I'm not offended by any of them. I'm just trying to educate you on what it is we do and how we do it.
Mm-hmm. Peaceful. Where do most technicians go? Like OEM, independent, or in-house for the manufacturer? Like where do most of the technicians that learn this kind of stuff go?
They usually go to hospitals. They usually go to hospitals first, all right? I know most of them from us, we place them mostly in hospitals. The second is probably the independent service organizations, and then the OEMs, all right? OEMs now are starting to look at schools like ours because, again, they're being hit just as bad as we are with the supply shortage, the supply and demand of, labor. So, but mostly now with our numbers, it's mostly hospitals, then independent service organizations, and then OEMs.
Do you think there was a greater level of appreciation for independent service centers when the hospitals were getting just like overcrowded during COVID and hit really hard? Because the problem that we have in our industry is that the manufacturer does not have the capacity to keep up with all the requests for maintenance of their products.
I had some problems with COVID, and here was my problem. You had companies like Ford developing ventilators, right? Because we didn't have enough of them. There was a supply shortage. I disagree with that. I think the companies that were doing the ventilators should have been the only ones to do them. I didn't want to have that. But I guess when COVID came, it was better to have some medical device on this person than not having anything. But when COVID was over, they should have removed all that. So I think everybody, the ISOs and the OEMs and the in-house biomed, they all cared about what was the best thing to do. Nobody wanted to take advantage of anything. I would hope not. But everyone wanted to do the right thing during this crisis as far as the repair goes. And I think we worked better as a team during COVID with all three organizations versus the way it is now. Now it's like COVID's over and let's get back to the grindstone of being competitive again instead of working together as a team. As a school, I encourage the OEMs to work closely with the ISOs and say, we support the right to work as long as you get this training from us, and we'll make it at a reasonable price, not this outrageous price of $20,000 a week, which is unheard of.
What? Wait, say that again.
Some of the schools from the OEMs can go up as high as $20,000 a week, and that doesn't even include your travel. And I know because I was trying to get some of my technicians to go to some of these schools.
That was a bachelor's degree when I was a teenager.
Exactly. That's almost our entire degree plan.
$20,000 for a week.
And that's on the high end. On the low end, you're looking at about $8,000 a week for training on one device. You know?
And this is what you're trying to solve with the VR training.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do. And the other thing we're trying to do is develop relationships with the OEMs to work together with the ISOs and come up to mutual agreement on both sides, what makes sense, what's a fair profit for the OEM, a fair profit for the ISO, and not gouging the hospitals at the same time, which still gives the hospital a reasonable price. That's the goal of our school, speaking out to the public, to our industry. This is what we should do to work together collaboratively. And how we're going to do that, it's still being done in the works. No one has taken on that task except our organization right now, with CBEC. We're trying to do that through the associations that we work with throughout the country and the independent service organizations.
What is something really great happening within the industry, but also something that needs to see a big change? What's a really good and a really bad?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, what I think is great happening in the industry is the sophistication of the medical devices. I'll give you an example. I had to have surgery this last year, and I was thankful for the Debunking OR robot. Because of that Debunking, instead of cutting you open to take out a gallbladder, they were able just to pierce you with 4 holes and then pull out the gallbladder, and they didn't even have to do stitches. They just put glue in it, and the next day I was up and moving around. Had I not had that Debunking, the healing time could be up to 1 month on that. So that's some of the great things on it. Now, some of the bad things on it, not everyone can work on a Debunking, right? With that, you need to be OEM certified and trained on. I would not, and that's another thing, a good ISO will not work on equipment that they're not really qualified to work on.
Yeah, that's one of the people, there was a troll in the stream earlier that was saying, you think this is all good, but why don't you work on any of this medical equipment? And I was saying, I don't want to work on an X-ray machine because I don't know how to work on an X-ray machine. Like I will work on the products that I know I can do a great job at, better than the manufacturer. I will not touch things where I don't know what I'm doing.
Right, and that's exactly right. Now, and just for the people that were asking about life safety, just so you know, in my hospital, we do not work on anesthesia equipment. I give that to the OEM, and that's because that's my choice as a business owner. And the reason why I do that, it reduces my risk on liability insurance. It keeps the OEM happy. They work with us because we have it under service contract, and they allow us to do first call, and we don't do anything without their consent. So my company actually has a pretty good relationship with the OEMs. I don't have the same problem as a lot of other ISOs have with OEMs because it's all about effective communication and establishing relationships and an understanding that's mutually beneficial financially for both organizations.
I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
You
Is there
so
anything
much.
you think I missed? Anything you want to get across to the people that are watching this? Most of them are going to be audience of, like component level board repair for laptop kind of channel.
Yeah, I would say one thing. For everyone that heard everything, of this debate with the right to repair, it's going to work out the way it's supposed to. It's going to be okay because we're going to make sure we communicate effectively. Don't be afraid to get into this industry. You'll be trained correctly. It's a fun industry. It's challenging. It's rewarding, and you'll make a good living at it.
And where do people find you again?
You can find us at cbet.edu, and you just go to the website. Any information you want, we're there.
Thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
you.
time. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day.
That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. All right. See, I almost spilled a cup of water on my laptop. You see that? See that? See, I'm a professional, though. I'm a professional. We don't play that water damage shit here. Anyway, see you in the next video. Bye now.